This conference will now be recorded.
21, do you want me to start over? The recording. So I'll call this meeting to order, the City Council meeting for January 5th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Looks like everybody's present. With that, there's been a couple additions, but I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the addition of the gambling license to consent agenda 10C. And then approval, we're going to flip-flop items 5 and 6 due to the city attorney having another meeting.
I'll move to approve.
And I'll second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Seiler, second by Maggie Bass. Ms. Bass, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
I guess Mike wants us to take roll, so Maggie, do you want to start it off?
Yes, aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Bruce?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
And I, Dwayne, aye. Okay, the next
The motion
is
carries 5-0.
motion carries 5-0. Thank you. The oath of office for the newly elected.
For the benefit of the council, as I met with Dwayne this afternoon to give him a bit of an overview for this tonight, yesterday we officially administered the oath of office to Dwayne as the incoming mayor and to both Sean and Bruce as council members, that in accordance with the recommendation from the city attorney's office, we are not able to electronically administer the oath of office, and we had to do that in person. And in accordance with the statutory provisions, the actual term of office for council members begins on the first Monday in January anyway. So we officially got them sworn in, but the intent tonight is to ceremonially administer the oath of offices, so that for record purposes and for anybody that may be watching from anyone's particular family, that we can still go ahead and administer the oath of office. So if, with your indulgence, we'll start with the mayor, and we'll go through these individually so that it's easier to hear, and go through the oath of office kind of like we did yesterday. So Dwayne, if you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I just lost the white box. Okay. I, Dwayne Jurek,
I, Dwayne Jurek,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and of the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties of the office as mayor
and faithfully discharge the duties of the office as mayor
of the city of New Prague
of the city of New Prague
in the counties of Scott and LeSueur
in the counties of Scott and LeSueur
and state of Minnesota,
in the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability,
So help me God.
so help me God.
All right, you're in like Flint for the second time.
Thank you.
All right, due to the longevity, Sean, we'll do you next. I, Sean Ryan, if you'll raise your
Ryan,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and of the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties of the office as council member,
and faithfully, what was it, execute?
discharge the duties
Discharge. You'll have to go slower for me, Mike. I hate these Zoom meetings.
and faithfully discharge the duties
And faithfully discharge the duties
of the office as council member
of the office of council member
of the city of New Prague
of the city of New Prague
in the counties of Scott and LeSueur
in the counties of Scott and LeSueur,
and state of Minnesota,
in the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
to the best of my judgment and abilities.
so help me God.
So help me God.
All right, you're in too. Yeah. And finally, but not least, Bruce, if you'll raise your right hand, I, Bruce Wolf,
I, Bruce Wolf,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of the office as council member
of the office of council member
of the city of New Prague
of the city of New Prague
in the counties of Scott and LeSueur
in the counties of Scott and LeSueur
and state of Minnesota
in the state of Minnesota
to the best of my judgment and ability,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
All right, congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
We have a full council. Mr. Mayor, back to you.
All right, we're going to go to item number 2, the 2021 appointment. City Administrator, Mike Johnson, would you like to take it?
What you have in front of you tonight for this item is the appointment of the city attorney. In accordance with City Charter Section 3.05, the council shall appoint the city attorney. You have been using Kennedy and Graven, and specifically Scott Riggs, for nearly the last almost 18 years. Their rate, their hourly rate for 21 is up $2.50 up to $174 for an hour for general civil matters, compared to the 2020 rate of $171.50. As I said, Mr. Riggs has been the city attorney since 2003, or almost 18 years here in a couple of months. We as staff don't have any recommendations or reasons to change, and would recommend that Scott be appointed as city attorney for 2021. Scott is in attendance in case you have any questions.
All right, I would take a motion to approve the recommendation of Scott Riggs as our city attorney and Kennedy and Graven.
So moved.
That was moved by Mr. Seiler and Ms. Bass, seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, it was moved by Ryan and second by Seiler.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't hear that well. So is Sean, you moved?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And I apologize.
Rick was second.
That's okay. I'll just speak in a higher voice. So
So I didn't catch who seconded that. Now, who seconded the motion, please?
I did. Seiler.
Seiler, okay. Yes, Mr. Wolf.
The memo refers to an increase in the civil charges. Was there any other increase in any of the other fees in the litigation or in the other areas?
Yes, those were up slightly as well, Bruce.
Okay. About the same amount percentage wise?
I believe so. That I pretty much compared most of the civil because that's where we spend most of the time, but you're correct in pointing out, as I should have noted, the comparison in the different. Scott, can you address that at all?
I can. Yeah, Bruce, they went up by the same basic percentage as the other. I see that Mike doesn't have it set out, but it should be a total of like $3 to $4, I think. Yeah, there's the letter. When he pulls it up, it should be right there in the first paragraph. That is consistent with what I do with all the other cities. So everybody, I charge the exact same for all the city attorney clients I deal with.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't understand if those numbers were the same or if they had increased, but totally support the motion and think we've gotten very good service.
Okay, then with that, I would take a roll call vote. I'm gonna start with, I'm gonna pick on Maggie this whole night to start out, if that's okay.
That's
that
fine.
Okay. So go ahead, Maggie.
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
and I vote aye.
Oh, motion- motion
5-0.
5-0.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to city council members, to boards and commissions,
No.
right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So with that, everybody got a list of the boards and commissions that they were on, and I finalized it this afternoon. Actually, right before the meeting. So the utility, pretty much everybody's gonna stay where they're at, and Rick's gonna, and Sean is gonna take an extra, it looks like. Utility commission will be Bruce Wolf. Park Board, Maggie Bass. Planning Commission, Sean Ryan. Joint Powers is Maggie Bass and Rick Seiler. Golf Board is Sean Ryan. UDA is the mayor and Bruce Wolf. The Cedar Lake Sanitary District, we're gonna appoint Rick Seiler. I'll take the Ambulance Advisory Committee. And then the New Prague Area Community Center Board is Rick Seiler. And number 10, I have a question, Mike. What is that? The joint planning?
I'll let Ken answer that question.
Huh?
Dwayne, that is for the joint planning commission between the city, Helena Township, and Scott County for our area that's basically within our orderly annexation area. So if we have any issues with land split or zoning questions that the county might have or the township, we all three entities get together and meet jointly and submit those recommendations back to all the respective boards of our entities.
Okay,
We don't meet very often.
okay. That was the question. Then Sean Ryan to that one.
Chuck must have snuck that in on me last year because I don't recall ever being on that board.
So this one, so then we need a motion to approve those appointments. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so I would take a motion to approve the appointments that I just made.
This is Maggie, so moved. And Sean, thank you for stepping up to the golf board.
Sure, thanks. I'll second.
Okay, motion was made by Maggie Bath, seconded by Sean Ryan. Any other discussion? Or any discussion? Hearing none, I'll do roll call vote. Maggie,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, up next is the City Council Vice President.
This is an item that in accordance with City Charter Section 2.06, that the council should choose from its members a vice president who serves as president in the mayor's absence and as the mayor in case of disability or absence from the city. This past year, Maggie has served in that capacity, but it's up to the council to appoint a vice president for 21.
I'd actually like to nominate Bruce Wolf.
I'll second that.
And the reason I'm doing it is because Bruce is going to play an important part over the next couple of years. Trying to rebuild after this COVID in Main Street. I think we're really going to need the EDA, and that is his business, and he knows it well. So I figured to give him a boost of confidence, and I think it's a good idea. So that's my motion.
And I'm seconding just for the reason, Maggie, I think you did a wonderful job as vice president last year, but kind of the keeping of the tradition where I did it 2 years ago and you did it, I think
Yep.
we should just kind of rotate through a little bit. So,
Absolutely. I'm fine. I'm fine. Absolutely.
Okay. So with that, there's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll do roll. Maggie,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Sean,
aye.
Bruce,
Abstain.
and I'll vote aye. Motion carries 4-0 with one abstention.
Congratulations, Bruce.
Thank you.
Now, Dwayne, you can make sure that Bruce gives all your speeches for you.
No, I have to find the job description on that.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a resolution appointing city depositories. Nope, I checked, I missed one. I checked D before it was done. Appointing city personnel. Apologize.
As identified in the memo, City Charter Section 3.05, on appointments, the council needs to approve staff appointments for 21. This has traditionally been relatively easy for the council, and so you have those positions listed as the administrator, chief of police, planning community development director, public works director, utilities general manager, and the finance director to continue serving here in 21.
Okay, with that, I would take a motion to approve the city appointments presented.
Siler, so moved.
Okay,
I'll second.
Maggie seconded. Any other discussion on that?
I have a quick question, actually. Bruce, are you a grade 15 where it's listed as general manager with the chief of police? Or are you considered the electric operations supervisor? Which is a grade 13.
No, Bruce is the general manager. The other one you talked about is Kenny Zwaber in the electric department.
Oh, okay. All right. I just wanted to get that clarified. That was the only question I had. And are we voting yet? Or it's been seconded?
It's been seconded, but any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, Maggie,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, the resolution appointing the official depositories for the city.
Again, under Minnesota statute 118A.02, the governing body is required to designate as a depository of its funds one or more financial institutions. Those being recommended or provided to me by Patty in the finance department are all of those listed in my memo to you. They are the same as last year, and that the council adopt the enclosed resolution at the conclusion of any discussion that actually appoints these depositories for city funds in 21.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt resolution 21-1-05-01?
This is Maggie. I'll make a motion to move.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Sean seconded the motion to approve the resolution. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none. Maggie?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Bruce?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, designate the official newspapers, item F on the agenda.
Again, and I know most of this is kind of considered rather routine, but under Minnesota statute 412.831, the council is required to designate a legal newspaper of general circulation in the city as its official newspaper, in which shall be published either our ordinances or other matters as required by law, and then any other matters that the council may deem it advisable and in the public interest to have published in this manner. As such, city staff would recommend the New Prague Times be designated as the official newspaper in 21 for these purposes.
Okay, I would take a motion to adopt the New Prague Times as the official publication.
So moved.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Rick, so moved.
Bruce, second.
Bruce seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Maggie?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Bruce?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Jerry votes aye. All right, the next item on the agenda is G. Actually, and we have a recommendation for G, H, and I all together. So, Mr. Johnson?
Again, one of the things we've typically done at this meeting is appointment of our consulting professionals, that being the city engineer, our financial advisor, and our city bond counsel. As you can see in the background materials, we appointed back in May of 2009, and they've continued to serve in that capacity. And that is the firm of SEH, or Short Elliott Hendrickson, with Chris Cavett being our city engineer. Later in the agenda is we'll talk more about the municipal state aid, but these appointments have been ongoing since that time, and we've been very pleased with the work that has come out of the SEH firm, and so we are recommending the continuation of the appointment as the city engineer here for 21. Back in 2009, when we were dealing with changes in the transition when I first came in, we appointed at that time Ms. Terry Heaton of what was Springstead. It is now Baker Tilly as the city's financial advisor. And at the time, John Utley was bond counsel, but he has retired and been replaced by Ms. Sophia Leike, also out of the Kennedy and Graven law firm. And so both of these individuals and firms assist the city typically with issuance of general obligation bonds for any of the capital improvement projects we have, or any other specific financial analysis or projects that may become necessary. So in the recommendation for 21 is the city engineer is SEH and Chris Cavett. The city financial advisor would be Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors and Terry Heaton, and city bond counsel would be Kennedy and Graven, Ms. Sophia Leike. The council can choose to act on these individually, or in the past, the council has also taken action to appoint all three of them at the same time. So it's whatever meets the council's pleasure.
Okay, you heard Mike's recommendation.
I'll make a motion that we approve all three.
Okay, motion's been made by Sean. Is there a second?
Bruce, second.
Bruce Wolf seconded the motion. Any other discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
Mike, is this done as a matter of just administration? Because there's no state statute that says we would have to do this. Is that correct?
That's correct, but we do it from the standpoint that if we have to represent ourselves in interactions with either MnDOT or other agencies in that, because we don't have an engineer on staff, by the council doing this, is we have the backing of the council and the city to formally acknowledge that SEH and Chris Cavett is our consulting city engineer. In the case of the financial advisor, that just allows us to basically put together whenever we need to do bonding or any other specific financial things. And the reason to have bond counsel identified is that if we do any bonding, we have to provide an opinion that goes with the bonding that says we've met all of the criteria in order for our bonds to be issued tax exempt. And so it's just, again, a given firm and an individual that does that work, and the council knows who those are up front.
Okay, thank you. We would have the ability to choose someone else on a particular deal. As an example, if Scott would recommend a different bond counsel, we could, on a particular deal, choose someone else though, correct?
Yes, we could.
Okay, thank you.
And I also have a question with regards to Chris. He is not acting as an agent of the city, so he cannot legally bind the city to anything. And I know, Chris, in the past, when you've presented some change orders, for example, your signatures on that change order. So he is just acting on behalf of the engineering firm, but not an agent of the city.
That's correct, Maggie, and Scott could confirm that, is that he doesn't have the abilities to bind us contractually without the council's taking action either on contracts, change orders, or any other financial obligations.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, Maggie?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Bruce?
Aye.
And Jarek votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. Appointment of the Newport Volunteer Fire Department Fire Chief and Officers.
Enclosed with my memo is the recommendations that have come over from the fire department. They met on December 17th and approved recommending the officers as shown on the backside of the memo, with Steve Rinda being recommended for fire chief for a 2-year term for 21 and 22. And then all of the other individuals that are shown in the chief 2 and 3, the captains, the lieutenants, and all of the other positions that are listed on the attached sheet.
All right, I will take a motion to approve this recommendation. The appointment of the Volunteer Fire Department Fire Chief and Officers for 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Maggie and Sean,
Yep.
any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Maggie,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
and Jarek votes aye. All right, resolution approving and appointing commissioners to the City Housing and Redevelopment Authority.
Enclosed is the resolution that appoints the members that we administered the oath of office tonight, appointing them to the city's Housing and Redevelopment Authority. The terms of appointment to the HRA generally are designed to coincide with the terms of elected office. The council has historically worn this hat, and so as new members are administered the oath, They also need to be appointed to the HRA. And in this case, we've got the mayor and 2 new council members, and that added to the existing council members of Rick Seiler and Maggie Bass. That would make up the complete body of the HRA. And so that action needs to be taken by approval of the attached resolution.
So I would take a motion to approve resolution number 21-05-05, correction, resolution 21-01-05-02.
So moved.
I'll second.
Rick and Maggie, any other discussion on this resolution? Hearing none, Maggie,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
and Jarek votes aye. Wait, Newbury Golf Board recommendation.
Just as a backup, we will not be able to administer the oath of office because it's electronically. So I'll need to get each of you in to administer that oath of office separately.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Now we'll go to the golf board.
Enclosed in your packet tonight is a recommendation from the golf board. And as I look out there, we have the president of the golf board, Mr. Tom Mock. And what they are recommending is the continuation for the second year of an agreement with Mr. Kurt Reeling and Golf Professional Enterprises. The first contract, which was for 2020, was an 11-month contract. They met in December. I've tried to explain the difference from the 2020 contract to the 21 contract, but they voted 6-0 at their December 22nd meeting. And Tom, I'll turn it over to you to provide any additional information that you'd like to for the council's benefit.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Mike. Yeah, as Mike said, we took up the question or the contract for the year 2021 between City of New Prague and Golf Professional Enterprises, which is in essence Kurt Reeling. Obviously, lots of discussion, but at the end of the day, we were over the course of 2020, we felt Kurt met all of our expectations in an exceedingly changing and tough environment that was 2020. So obviously through the month of November, Mike had included some of the financials. Obviously this isn't year-end 2020 numbers, but for most purposes in the golf world, by the time you get to the end of November, you're not going to change the bottom line much. But we had a net positive change of about $216,000 shown in the financials that were in your packet. So just a great year in a very tough environment that Kurt and his staff really adapted well to. We couldn't have been happier. Once March hit, we just didn't know how things were going to go, much less were we going to be able to be open and operate the golf course. We were severely hampered, obviously, we all know, with the food and beverage. So we're hoping in 2021 that will pick up. But Kurt and his staff did a great job managing that effort, and they're really we had nothing but really good things to say about his first year as the management group. And so our discussion on December 22nd and the way we voted was 6-0 to approve the terms of the contract for 2021. And it's for a full 12 months. We don't have, we're not missing a month like we did in 2020, which we would like to move forward with from this point on. I guess that's about all I have to say. If anyone has questions, comments, concerns.
I have
Yeah.
one, Tommy.
Sure.
And I'll admit, Kirk did a fantastic job under some tough circumstances, but you know, so did the entire city. I don't care if you were in the office or a police officer or a public works guy. They all had to deal with COVID. Well, we all did, you know. And we only gave those, the city employees a 2.75% raise. I read in the paper yesterday, the state of Minnesota only gave theirs 2% raise. And I know that we had, the rounds were up and whatnot, but we still had to pull money from the general fund to make the golf course whole. And 625, I mean, I'm going to have, to be honest with you, I'm going to have a lot of people asking me questions. You know, how can we give a losing golf, golf course that loses money, but still is an amenity to the, I'm not saying it's not an amenity to the city, but how can we give them 6.25% when the rest of the city workers, even though he's on a private contract, still he's viewed as working for the city in one capacity or another, a 6.25. I mean, I'd be much happier with a 2.75, more in line with what we gave the police officers and the rest of the city staff. Sorry, Kurt, I don't know how you feel about it, but, or how the rest of the council feels about it, but I know that that's come up before when it was a previous owner of the business. And there were some bigger increases in there, and we sometimes whittled that down a little bit to match where the rest of the city staff was going. I'd like to hear from the rest of the council what their feeling is.
I'm very like-minded, Sean.
My opinion, just on that particular question, I have some other questions, but on that particular question, Sean, I view it as we had the same, it's not an increase at all, that it's basically the same contract amount, but we're doing it for the whole year versus what we did last year was 11 months. So I view it that it's the same contractual rate that we're getting.
What month was that, Bruce? I mean, 11 months. I think we missed January, which really wasn't a working month, or February. I don't know, Kurt, what kind of requirements it takes to, how often you're there in the middle of winter. But, it's not like it's a full-time month that, it wasn't like May.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I think that, in my opinion, reviewing the position and all the responsibilities as a 12-month position, the city has looked at it as a full-time position for many years now. So whether they're golfing in January or not, there's still work being done, whether it's bingo or you're planning or you're working on things. You may decide to defer maintenance like we did or lay people off, that circumstance. But unless we're talking about doing that where we're not going to have them working, I view it as a 12-month contract. I understand what you're saying. I just look at it differently.
Yeah, I'd like to also add that remember on that 2020, Kurt basically did work 12 months. We did need somebody at that course the month of January, the month he wasn't getting paid for. And he agreed to take an additional pay cut to man that facility, whether it's taking calls, with vendors or dealing with taking, appointments or setting up events, the day-to-day operations where we need somebody there to answer a phone call, by contract, and what we tasked him with the shutdown for a month because of our finances, and it would have been well within his, his contract to just say, I will not show up in January. I would think most people did, but Kurt didn't do that. So I will say he went up above and beyond what we expected in 2020. And that was for sure the overall theme of our discussion within the golf board, and that's why we did not have a problem with the contract amount. Obviously, we had no idea what your other raises are around the rest of the city. So we didn't have that as a baseline to decide what his contract amount should or shouldn't be. But we all felt that you know, the management fee being down low in 2020 and everything he did, we felt that number was appropriate for 2021 for the effort that he put in. So all I can say is that was our discussion, and I guess the end result is up to you as a council.
And I'd like to chime in here too, just for clarification. The contract amount in 2020 was 80,000. And granted, it was paid out over a 12-month period. The contract amount for 2021 is an increase to 85,000. And Sean, I think that's where you're seeing the 6.25%. It is a $5,000 increase. And Tom, the Mayor Nicolai, the former Mayor Nicolai was on the golf board, and he knew at that time what our increases would have been for the employees. So there was knowledge there. Unfortunately, it doesn't sound as if there was discussion. Granted, you know, I'm very happy that the golf course did as well as it did and was very resilient and adaptive to everything that went on in 2020. As to Sean's point, so did every department, every city employee in the city of New Prague. And I think 6.25% is a little over the top, considering what we don't know what 2021 is going to bring as well. So I'm fine increasing the amount, but increasing it by the same amount as any other city employee.
Go ahead, Bruce, if you want.
I just want to make sure I have to stand corrected. I think I misunderstood this memo. I didn't realize this does represent an increase, and I misunderstood the way this was written. So the contract was 73,333, and if you annualize that, that'd be 80,000. If there was no increase, we'd be talking about an $80,000 contract. Am I correct?
Yes, since I wrote it, let me clarify, is that the contract amount was based on the assumption that it was an $80,000 annual contract. Because the contract ended up only being for 11 months, that decreased that contract to $73,333. That amount was paid out over the 12 months at Kurt's request. But yes, it was only an 11-month contract based on 80,000.
I appreciate that. I misunderstood that. I thought this represented a zero increase, but it does represent then a 6.25% increase over our contract.
Okay, I have a question. So Kurt's a city employee, but he's an employee. Explain how.
Kurt is not a city employee.
Independent contractor.
He's an independent contractor.
Gotcha.
I'm ready to pipe up too here.
Go ahead, Rick.
You know, Kurt, you did a great job, and I'm glad the numbers look the way they do. And Tom, thank you for coming and presenting them. But that is huge. I mean, that's big. What are we going to tell the rest of our employees that the guy at the golf course is more valued than they are? I don't think so. 6.25 is just too high. So I don't know. I would, if you're doing an 80,000 contract like that, gosh, I don't know how you guys want to do it, but 6.25 is way too high. So I don't.
If I may chime in here, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to. This is Kurt from the golf course. I think the dollar amount against the budget is what works, not against the city. And nothing against the city. I was born in this city. I've lived here for 52 years. But what we did last year was 11,000 additional human beings came to this facility, came to this department, and they were dealt with. And I'm not downplaying anybody's work with the COVID, but one of the first public arenas that was opened during the pandemic was the golf course. We increased our membership. We increased the number of bodies here. We didn't know that going in. I didn't know that going in when the contract was agreed to, but yet they came here and we dealt with them. And I feel very confident with what we did here, how we turned the budget around, and how many additional people came to this facility. I don't keep a time card with the city. It's a contract. But I can assure you, I can prove over 2,200 hours here for this seasonal facility last year. That's why I asked for that money, because of the amount of time I spent making the changes and the positive changes to the budget that I did. To me, it's not me challenging everybody else's job or anybody else's dollar amount. It's what I did and our staff did against our budget. That's what I would like to make sure everybody looks at. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion?
Tom, I have some questions. Did the board or did anyone do any kind of a performance review or anything like that?
Yeah, that would be through Mike. The board doesn't conduct a performance review, so I'll let Mike talk to that. And the only thing I'll also add is, you know, if we do change this contract amount, you know, I believe this is what Kurt presented to the city. So, you know, he has a decision to also, you know, if this isn't the number, retract his, you know, his offer for the golf professional services for the year 2021, and then we are really left in a tough situation if we don't have a management group in place for 21. So that's all else I want to say, but I'll let Mike talk on the review.
No, I don't need Mike. I don't need Mike to answer that question. I was asking the board if they did any kind of review or understanding. Did the board review the scope of services and were those things performed?
Yeah, what we reviewed really is on a monthly basis. We go through the marketing, we go through you know, obviously all those items. I don't know if we call it a perfect review of Kurt's management, but in essence, by looking at the bottom line and then everything we're doing in a marketing standpoint, you know, in our, you know, there's a lot of scope of services, and maybe we need to go line item by line item at the end of the year, but we did not do that. I would say we hit the major points on a monthly basis, but we don't do, you know, we obviously discussed his performance at length at our December 22nd meeting, but did we go down every line item? I can't say we did that.
Well, it's difficult when we're talking, and Kurt's got to be, it's challenging because we're really talking about an entity that to see if they performed on their agreement. And that's really what I'm kind of getting is I really thought Kurt gave a great presentation and talked about the successes and congratulated him before on his success and the employees. But I understand that there was some work done with the marketing plan and those things were all in the right direction. And I'm more talking about the process in the future and going forward, that we're giving the appropriate feedback to staff and people that are doing this work. So I was just curious to see if we reviewed some of the things like the management plan that we talked about last year, if that was put together. I know a marketing plan, and maybe I'm not suggesting that we hold anybody to these things under the circumstances we had last year, but going forward, there should be a process that we're reviewing some of these things. Customer services, one of the issues in the scope of services, so I'm really interested in that type of thing. Have we done any kind of a survey to see what kind of satisfaction level that the scope of services talks about with the membership or with the city? Was there anything done in the customer service or satisfaction area? I've heard good things and some criticisms, so I just don't know what.
We didn't do a survey this year. We've done one, I believe the last time we did one was last year. You know, I don't, it might be, I might be the lone opinion, but I don't think I'd want to send out a survey every year. I don't think we're going to get very good responses if we continually send surveys year after year. Maybe we would, and maybe I'm wrong there, but we did not send one this year. What I can say is that from my experience in 2019 and 2020, I don't recall nearly as many customer service complaints or issues that we had in 2020. So, you know, that it's kind of a gray, loose, you know, number or, you know, reference line there, but that's all I can say on that.
Yeah, I would agree. Maybe you don't need to do it every year, but since this is his first year, it would have been nice to have something. And I'm not trying to criticize anybody, but not only for us, but for him to get feedback. And if he did a great job, we'd like to acknowledge that, like be able to acknowledge the things that were done that were good. So you're looking for some documentation sometimes, but so I'm really kind of talking about the future and how we can kind of refine this process. So we're not just kind of trying to pull things out of thin air and make judgments about increases and things like that. But what I'm hearing you say, Tom, is that Kurt has presented to you an offer for an agreement, and this is it.
I don't know that for sure. I can't tell you that's the case. I don't know what the negotiation level is with Kurt. That most likely would happen between Mike and Kurt. The board really doesn't get in, you know, contract discussions like that. This is what was presented to us. So I don't know Kurt's, you know, thinking as far as if this is it or if it's, or there's room to, you know, for movement. That would be for, you know, Mike to discuss. At this point, all I'm telling you is when you're working with a management company and they're not an employee, obviously those are the terms, right?
I appreciate it. I don't want to take up the whole floor, but thanks, Tom.
Tom, I think, and I'm going to insist on it as a council rep for the golf board next year, you know, we should get this contract probably in September and then have time to negotiate it. I don't like being under, you know, a gun held to my head saying if we don't do it in January, we'll never be open in March because we'd have too much work to do. I'm not saying Kurt didn't do a wonderful job. I played the course many times this summer. It was in fantastic shape and everybody seemed happy and did the best they possibly could given some of the circumstances. But, you know, to come in January and say, well, you know, if he doesn't accept a 2.75 or a 3% or something that we want to discuss, you know, now we're behind the 8 ball and in trouble. I just, you know, I have a tough time swallowing that. So I think next year the golf board's going to have to start getting a contract and discussing it in September and October, maybe bringing it to the council in November and get an agreement there. So it gives us some time that we don't have this proverbial gun to our head. So,
You know, Sean, I'm in total agreement with you on that. I don't like being held over the barrel either. Kurt, I think you did a great job. I'm not cutting you down. I'm just saying, asking for 6.25. Now we've got to go explain that why we gave you 6.25 when the rest of everybody else is really suffering from COVID too. It's not just you, but it's, I'm not trying to say, I'm just saying 6.25 is a lot of money when all the rest of us are failing. You know, we lost the consignment lodge, we're losing the bars, and so everybody's under the gun, everybody's having problems. Last year sucked, let's face it. But I'm just saying, and I think Sean's saying the same thing. I think I heard him say that you did a good job, and but the 6.25, that's really big, and then now we don't have time to negotiate it out and to try to figure it out. So yeah, no, that means we're held over the gun. That means now we'll have to decide how we're going to do it next year, because I don't want to get to January next year and the same thing come up, especially if we have a really bad 21. So I don't know what you guys want to do with this. I don't like that 6.25 either.
This amount, this is Mike speaking, this amount was in the November budget materials that the golf of course, presented to the council and that you adopted in December.
Yeah, we should have much more discussion on it even earlier than that, probably when we started the budget stuff in September. At least
Yeah,
get the final contract.
And you start loading us up with all that budget stuff, there's stuff that's gonna slip by, and this obviously did, because I wouldn't have approved this if I would have seen it, but we were so busy with everything. So I apologize because I didn't catch it then. I'm worried about 2021 not working out very well, and now we just okayed this. What is the next year gonna look like? I mean, I'm worried that he's going to get a big raise this year, and the rest of everybody else is gonna be failing. So, but once we sign this, he's set, so.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't look at it that way. I honestly and personally feel like I've earned it, and that's the only reason I asked for it. I thank everybody for applauding the budget and everything. I would just love to see some comments from people that were on site, seeing how we adapted to all the changes every day, to see how we served customers through a window, to see how we physically went out and sanitized carts when 11,000 additional people came to the facility. Last year, there were less than 19,000 total. This year, there were over 29,000. And it's just something that I felt like I earned with my performance last year, being put on the spot and alternating from working through a window to putting up plexiglass, to eating out on the patio, to eating inside, to putting plexiglass up inside, to closing it, to closing the snack bar, to moving coolers around to accommodate the customers, to having meals placed in to-go containers so we can accommodate the revenue of 100-player events, to blocking off the golf course, serving some behind the clubhouse, serving some in the middle of the golf. There were a lot of moving parts that are not represented in the numbers that you see in the budget. And the numbers in the budget, I'm very proud of. And I thank every one of you for thanking me about the job I did. And I don't know. I mean, it's up to you guys. I just know that this is not a budget from I'm not even going to say that. This is a budget that took physical ability to compile, and the numbers are just a tiny part of what actually happened out here with masks and sanitizers and gloves. And, a lot of people suffered. I get that. And unfortunately, they suffered because people were prevented from going to their place of business. People were asked to come to this one, and we accommodated more people than this facility has had in, from what I can calculate, over 20 years. And our marketing plan with bringing in new people worked, and we had return golfers. I just want to make sure everybody understands that, numbers are numbers, but there's a way that there's a lot of things that happen before we put those numbers on a sheet of paper. And there were a lot of things out here. So I'm not trying to, well, I guess I am in some part trying to justify it, because I wasn't looking at a percentage compared to anybody else. I was looking at what I was fortunate enough to give this facility this year, and the percentage improvements in the budget compared to the percentage improvement in my contract. That's why I did it. And I'll let you guys talk and mute myself here for a while, unless you have any questions. Thank you again for the time.
How about if can I propose something? Can I propose? This is Maggie. I don't know who else is talking. Can I make a proposal?
Yes.
So if we were to approve this contract at $85,000, can we take $2,500 and set it aside? And Kurt, if your review in 2021 is positive and numbers are good, and then that $2,500 is well earned. Basing 2021 on what happened in 2020, I don't think is, in my opinion, the right way to look at it. So 2020 was an anomaly. You did fantastic. Again, you and your crew were resilient, but let's see what happens in 2021. And if we have that same positive turnaround, then by all means, then you're entitled to that additional money. I don't know if that's a good compromise or not. So it would be kind of like a little bonus payment if 2021 turns out to be a good year.
So I guess as a golf board, I have nearly 10 years, Maggie, on the golf board, and we've done this before. My only issue would be, what is the criteria for that bonus? Is it a certain profitability? Is it a certain revenue level? Is it a certain level of keeping expenses in check? That's where we've always struggled in years past with previous management companies on how to determine if that bonus gets paid out.
Well, I think that, could be some additional discussion, and, even amongst the golf board, if there are particular criteria that would need to be met. Again, 2020 was an anomaly, and can't expect that the numbers are going to be just as good in 2021. I sure hope they are. But I don't have it all worked out, Tom, because this is just, something I thought about at this moment, so that maybe we can get over the hump and not worry so much about the total dollar amount, but to hold a little back just so that the 2021 performance is good. By all means, it's earned.
Do we have to approve this tonight?
Well, we need to have something in place that we're dealing with, or Kurt is, that as we talk about, we could have something possibly getting started, depending on what the governor does this week, as it relates to whether we're going to open up with the Chamber of Commerce and whether we're going to have the community bingo program back at the golf course or not. But he deals with, as was described earlier, setting up all of the events and the activities and making certain that they're scheduled and that we know what has to be done with that. Kurt's also handling all of the membership applications and information and questions that come in on that. He's also in process of scheduling, making sure that we have product and materials coming into the Golf Pro Shop. So he's not sitting on his fingers, idly sitting by, that even though you don't see the activities like you do in the summer or when the golf course opens up as early as into April and staying open till October, there is a lot of work that does go on from his standpoint in the January, February, March time period in getting ready for the opening of operations. So it really is an annual contract, and we don't have anybody else over there answering the phone or handling any walk-up traffic or dealing with memberships other than through the contractual arrangement we have by having that staffed by Kurt.
Okay.
The reason that I included the information on the financials is that, one of the biggest factors that enters into trying to gauge annual performance, and we went down that path with the previous golf contract manager, GME, and the golf board, and it was very difficult, as Tom was describing, trying to have any kind of criteria to have any kind of bonus payment system there, because one of the big facets that impacts the annual operations is what happens with Mother Nature and what kind of rain do we have. Just like the farmers out there, it affects us significantly as well. This was Kurt's first year, and if you recall, in 2018 and 2019, we did not have good financial years. Part of it was related to weather in both of those years, but we also were seeing a lack of attention, I think, focused on golf operations by our previous contract manager. And so when you sit here tonight, and the reason I threw that in is because at the time of putting this together, we don't have the year-end December or the entire year to date yet. But if you take a look at the difference in revenues of where we sit through the first 11 months this year compared to 11 months last year, is, as Kurt highlighted, because of a number of things that he did, is our revenues are essentially up $100,000 over this same point in time last year, and expenses year to date are down 116,000 from what they were, which goes back to what Tom Mock indicated, is that through the month of November, we've seen a turnaround in the golf operations completely to the tune of about $216,000. That doesn't happen by accident. And so when you take a look at it, a large part of that is attributable to the work that Kurt and his staff and our staff did in reacting to the pent-up demands and people wanting to get out and get into recreation in that. But how he handled that with all of the elements that he talked about, how we serviced members coming, how we dealt with the COVID requirements. And yeah, we all had to deal with it, but he had to go through a lot of extra effort there at the golf course that normally isn't part of the normal routine that we historically would have done at the golf course. And so he did react to that increase in membership, and that's partly what had a great impact on the increase in the revenues that we experienced with green fees, cart fees, and handling the clientele that came through that facility. So, you know, that's additional background that I think you needed as you sit here and you weigh this. And as I said before, I can go back and show you historically what the contract arrangements have been going back to, what was it, 2011, when we started with GME, and we worked with them up until 2019. And we tried to create the bonus system with them. And it functionally proved to be very difficult, and we chose to get away from that back during that time frame. So what you're talking about doing tonight, it isn't as if it hasn't been tried before in the golf operations. It is just materially very, very difficult to do and to set the criteria to make that happen.
The only other thing I'd like to add is that, you know, when we do deal with a contract manager entity instead of a city employee, I think we are dealing a little bit differently than, you know, just your standard across the board rate increases. Kurt's group can be let go, I believe, in 30 or 60 days. Mike, is that?
30 days.
He only has a 1-year contract. So if at the end of the year, the council or the board decides he's not doing his job, he's let go. I know that obviously can be done in the city employee environment, but I don't think it's done as easily. So I'd also say he operates in a little more volatile environment. It's not quite the same arrangement as a across the board city employee, but that's all I'll say to that. And we did have these numbers. I'll be the first to admit in November with the budget, because this number was part of our budget in October and November that Chuck mainly worked on, but obviously we all discussed. And quite frankly, we didn't look at this as in a percentage standpoint. We felt Kurt did the job in 2020 above and beyond what he deserved. We felt 85,000 was not a large, or a $5,000 increase was not a large amount. And quite frankly, we never looked at a percentage or considered what the rest of the city employees would be getting. And if that's going to continue to be a factor, I think we need to talk about that in September and October, John, and make sure that, you know, we're not getting on a line where this is continuing to be an issue, I guess. That's all I'll offer there.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, Tom. We put in your notes to bring up maybe even starting in August, and, you know, and initially start talking where we're at. But certainly by September.
I'm going to ask a question here, because I'm new to this. We didn't have these agreements when I was on the council. Basically, we're hiring Kurt. I'm just trying to get my hands around it, so please correct me when I'm wrong. We're hiring Kurt to run a city entity, a private individual to run a city entity in his group. Are all the employees that are under Kurt his employees?
No, they are city employees.
So bartenders, mechanics, all those people are city employees. And we're
Correct.
hiring Kurt as a
Contract manager.
contract manager to run the operation. Okay.
A number of years ago when we, back in 2011, and Sean, I think you were on the council at that time, is that the council, when we used to have a city employee that was the golf course manager, there were issues about salary and benefits being paid to that position. And the council directed city staff, and we advertised and went out, and starting in 2011 in February, the council went to a contract manager, which was in place for 2011 through 2019 with GME, which was headed up by Wade Broad. Kurt agreed to take over or to submit a proposal, and that which came in based on about 80,000 for a 12-month contract is that offer initially came in probably lower than had we gone out and tried to hire this in the marketplace. And so from that standpoint, he maybe worked against himself in offering the contract for this last year at an estimated value of 80,000 for the full 12 months. And so when you take a look at that, yes, it seems like it's a significant amount. But again, you've got to look at a number of the factors that have kind of been reviewed and looked at in the process. If I went back and took a look at what the contract was and what the allocation was that the council made available for additional staff under GME, is they had a contract amount when this ended back in 2019, I believe at upwards of $125,000 or $128,000. So when you take a look at where we're at here at 80,000 gross for 2020, and now proposed to go to 85 contractually, we couldn't advertise this and go out and backfill under a contract manager arrangement and get somebody for probably $85,000.
And Mike, what do you, if you had city employee manager, what do you think that's annual salary might come in at? Because I know where we ended up with the previous city employee manager, and it was leaps and bounds above this amount.
It is. I don't have, I've got a summary, but I don't have it in front of me right now as to exactly.
I was part of the council when that was still enacted, and I know it was north of $120,000. So, you know, that, I guess I'll just offer that.
Well, you know, listen, guys, we've been talking about this for a long time. I mean, the numbers are really, really good, and I don't mind giving Kurt, you know, a bonus and an incentive like that. And yes, this is compared from my first year here, this is a lot better than what we were looking at. So for the sake of getting this done, Sean, would you be willing to just let this go for this year, and then next year, next October, we'll sit down and figure out what our future contracts, you know, there should be an increase, systematic increase, or at least some sort of platform to work off of on this. But if I was to make the motion to go ahead and approve this right here, right now, would you be okay with it? And under the hespis of we're going to get together next September because we don't want this next January. Right now, if I make this amendment, Kurt, you're the only one that made money off of last year. That's the only thing I'm saying. It's the $5,000 bonus. That is not that big of a deal for an $80,000 a year job. I mean, but what I'm saying is, the golf course has a tendency to not do so good. And last year we had the COVID, so everybody went there. So it really did good. But that don't mean that's going to keep continuing. So I don't want to start a pattern of giving you $5,000 bonus every year when there's a failure. You see what I'm saying? So I don't
Absolutely.
know.
I'm not,
For the sake of getting through this, I'm going to recommend that we approve. And there you go.
Okay, Rick has made a motion. Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay,
I'm going to
Sean,
change my mind based on what Mike Johnson during his speech. I think Kurt deserved a raise. I think 625 was a little aggressive. I'll be on the golf board next year and we'll watch it a little. We'll be a little bit more cognizant of what the other city employees are looking at and base it more off of realistic numbers, because 2020 was an anomaly that we'll probably never see again if unless it comes raging back. But there was nothing to do but golf, and that's why. And I know it put a lot of stress on Kurt and his staff, and I appreciate all the extra hard work, but it wasn't like that wasn't going on in City Hall. But so yeah, just to move it along, and I'll just give the council a promise that we'll watch it next year.
Thank you.
okay, so there's a second. Any other discussion?
Well, I'll agree with the contract, again, based on comments that, Mike, you made of previous contract dollar amounts and the fact that Sean will be on the golf board. And hopefully we can create some type of performance review, you know, and have something a little more structured, and something more structured in a more normal golf year as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. And I would like to just offer, we should be approving this now. To me, this should be approved to take effect January 1st, back in December 1st or something. So when the discussion like this, if there's an oops, we have time to wiggle. My 2 cents. So with that, any other discussion? Hearing none, Maggie?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Bruce?
Aye.
And Jerry votes aye. 5-0, motion carried.
Thank you, Kurt.
appreciate you guys. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, next.
Thanks, Tommy. Thank you, Kurt.
I'm trying to jump so we get Scott in here. Because I know he has to go. So, can we talk about the residential agreement?
Let me give a little bit of background that enclosed in front of you tonight is kind of the draft outline of the residential lease agreement for the rental property located north of City Hall. And as I acknowledged in my memo to you, that this is coming back to you based on discussions that we had during the budget process. And it should be noted that this is the property that the city purchased back in August of 1997, or about 23 and a half years ago. And it was a rental house at the time that the city purchased the property, and it has continued to be a rental property once the city acquired it. And we have at present the same rental situation with the current renter that was in place when the city acquired the property. That the rent has been acknowledged in the budget discussions, as well as in my memo, is inordinately low compared to most normal rental situations. However, that was what we've been able to, at least doing the research that I have, is kind of what was in place when the city acquired it. There are no conditions that necessarily are in writing that elaborates on any of the rental arrangements, and it has continued since that time. And there have been no changes really since I've been here in '08. We did take it to the council a number of years back to see if they wanted to change the rent. The council's action was to not increase the rent, and so we've worked with the city attorney's office trying to create a rental arrangement that covers the current situation, but it has been kind of very challenging at best. It's not like renting an apartment. That's pretty easy, that we as a landlord kind of own everything. We rent the apartment and the renter maybe picks up the utilities, but the landlord pretty much takes care of all of those pieces that are owned in an effort to retain and keep the property up. In this case, there are a number of appliances that are owned by the, as we know it, by the renter. All of the rest of it are fixtures that are part of the house. And so as we've continued to take a look at this, we've got some areas that we might make additional modifications or changes in. But I've asked Scott to kind of to be here tonight and to talk a little bit about the agreement that we have. We've got some notable challenges as we try to deal with kind of section 4A, 4C, item 4J, and item 5A, is that in bringing this to you, that the challenge is that obviously at the rent that we have, the question comes down is what is the renter responsible for versus what we as the owner, what are we responsible for, and how do we want to structure this kind of lease. And the difficulties, again, is that where there was nothing done and created way back when the city accepted this rental arrangement as part of buying the property in 1997, has made it somewhat difficult to now try to do some 23 years later. And so it's kind of, I've had a lot of dialogue and ongoing discussions, and maybe Scott, you can share a little bit of from your standpoint, from a legal perspective, the challenges in what we're trying to consider after putting this together to kind of bring to the council kind of what we're wrestling with at the present time.
Sure, I can jump in. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, Mayor and Council, my quick comment would be, and Mike covered a lot of this, it's a very unique situation to have a house in this condition that has essentially been a leased property for over 23 years, and we don't have anything in writing on it. So what we've tried to do is get a fairly simple lease structure and fill in the blanks of where and what is existing on the property, which it's difficult to, it's difficult to put that together so far after the fact, not knowing the condition of everything. And I know Mike is noted that there have not been a lot of improvements to the property, but it's essentially a situation where somebody has controlled this property not only for the 23 plus years the city's now in ownership, but even beyond that time. The biggest issue is how you treat this from an insurance perspective. And Mike cited the provisions in the lease that are relevant here as to what's there, what the city is obligated to do and perform and repair, as well as what's the insurance standpoint and how we should have this property insured. If the council is okay with the structure and the idea of, and I think the recommendation is strongly from Mike and I, that you have a written lease in place and that's what should be there, we can certainly finalize and bring back to the council the insurance aspects, as well as whatever else needs to be done relative to the existing property itself, as to what are our obligations to repair, what are our obligations to replace, knowing that the idea is it's not be a long-term relationship moving into the future, even though it's been 2.5 decades already almost at this point in time. So my bigger concern would be in the answers to questions I think you need before finalizing it would be, are you okay with the structure of the payments? And if you're okay with that, what does the council think or believe should be the obligation of the city to repair on the property, knowing that the idea is not to continue this use, much further into the future. And if those questions are answered, I think the simple lease will take care of most of the aspects here.
I have a question for you. When this was done, wasn't it done on a handshake? I mean, didn't we agree to let the wife live there? Once the husband died, she was going to live there until she died. Is that? I remember there was something about that. I mean, Sean or Glenn, you might even remember that. But I think that it was all done on a handshake, wasn't it? Didn't we promise to let the renter stay there until she passed? I don't know.
The only thing I can respond on that is that I have nothing in writing, but it was because we were unable to find any actual purchase agreement, even after checking with the attorney that was involved in the process and checking all of our files. There was nothing there, but in taking a look at it and talking with my predecessor, is that the city, when they acquired the property, they acquired it with the renter in place as it was at that time in 1997. There was nothing that said that the rent could never increase, but there was an understanding when it was assumed to be acquired, and I don't know what went on in all of the direct negotiations with the estate that the city purchased the property from, is that there was a recognition that due to the economic situation with the renters, is that the city would buy the property, but it was understood that the city would attempt to accommodate the renters that were in place at the time that it was purchased. But there are no written provisions that govern or control that we've been able to uncover.
This thing's driven me nuts for 10 years. It's just completely, the city has no business being a renter, especially considering that we're subsidizing below market rates with city tax dollars. I mean,
Yeah, we're all, everybody's paying in the city, so it's, but we're honorable people. We're honorable people, council. We're honorable people. If there was an agreement, we got to stick to it, don't we?
Well, that's one of the challenges that in taking a look at it, you have to remember that there was a previous council involved, not necessarily anybody even 10 years ago, is you have to go back to the time that the city acquired that in 1997, and they didn't do things the way we're trying to do those today. On the economics of the deal, as I've tried to mention, we brought that to the council here. I don't know if it was 3 or 4 years ago, asking the council whether they had any desire or interest to consider changing the rent, and the council's action at that time was no. So it's been before the council to consider changing the rent, and the council has told staff that they didn't want to change the rent. So previous councils have had hands in both the acquisition of the property originally and the conditions that surrounded that purchase from the previous estate that sold it to the city, as well as some consideration to changing the rent, which didn't receive an affirmative vote.
So the rent that is currently being collected, I think, is captured in your memo, that it does cover property taxes and the insurance that the city has on the property and the dwelling. The renter would have to carry renter's insurance. I think the one area that concerns me just a little is that the tenant has to acknowledge in the agreement that the unit is safe and clean and in good condition. If that is not the case, does the city have any potential liability, or can the tenant then say, I'm not going to enter into this lease because it's not a safe and clean and in good condition building? I know what the place looks like from the outside, and so I don't know what's going on the inside.
Are they on a month-to-month lease right now? I mean, did their lease run out, so now it's month-to-month? Is that
There is no lease, Rick. That's the whole problem.
That's it. So right now it's on a month to month.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
you could literally tell her to move out next month.
No, you can't, not right now with COVID.
Yeah,
Right.
there's no eviction.
We also have the winter weather conditions on utilities that come into play as well.
Can we sell the property?
What do you guys want to do on that?
The intent and the discussion all along has been is that whenever this rental arrangement ceases, is that the intent would be is that the property would be demolished.
Does the city need that lot for future growth anymore? We already have a parking lot back there. We do need it.
That would be our recommendation to the council, would to be retain it as part of the property that we have there at the City Hall complex.
And just for the council's benefit, I'll remind them, several years or a couple different years, it's been probably 5, 6, 7 years now, but we have had other renters in New Prague that have come in and complained about this. I mean, it's grossly under fair market value. They feel it's being subsidized by taxpayer dollars. I can't disagree with them. And it is, we've had people address the council before. It's been a number of years, but they have come in before and complained that this is going on. And I think at the time, Mike, it might have been neighbors that were renting houses close by. Do you remember?
I do not.
Okay.
How long is this? Is this a yearly lease?
Month to month.
No, this here, this document.
Month to month.
It's a month to month. It says it on the first page.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Under
The
rent.
idea of the lease is to try to make it as close to what's going on right now, at least as what we believe is going on right now. So it will be month to month.
I'd like to just make a couple comments. I appreciate Mike and Scott getting this put together. My desire is to get something in writing. I understand the rental gives us heartburn about the price, but as I mentioned before, I kind of look at that as being the negotiations of the original purchase agreement. That's what was created, and that was part of that. But I think we achieved by getting a good understanding and limiting the city's liability, but there's benefits to the tenants and knowing what's going to go on. And I'm hopeful that through this process, the tenant and the city has a good understanding of what would happen if there's a fire or if there's something that goes on, to have the discussion that the city is not, our long-term plan is to demolish it. So we're not going to be reinvesting a lot of money. We're not going to build a brand new house if it burns down. So we have that good communication with the tenant to know that this is a very unusual circumstance. It might not last long. And if something doesn't, the city doesn't have any intentions, and we want to make you very well aware of that, of rebuilding it. And so my take on it would be that the city does a normal amount of maintenance. We're not going to re-roof it or do any substantial dollar amount of repairs, is my take on it. But have this conversation and get something in writing so we don't surprise the family members or anybody else in the future if something happens. You know, if there's any issues, we have a recourse if it's in writing, how things will happen. If something happens on the property, we can address it. So I'm certainly in favor of the document, the way it's written. And I'm not sure, Scott, if you were looking for more of an answer with the what repair question you had, or exactly what you're asking.
Yeah, well, and again, we're trying to preserve what's there, and it's not clear what's there. So that's the struggle Mike and I have had, that typically in these types of situations, a landlord is responsible for certain repairs and upkeep. Oftentimes you can shift that to a tenant as well. And you have a situation that's gone on for 23 plus years where not much money has been put into this. And based on what Mike has said and what my understanding is, we don't want to put too much money into this, because the idea is that it be demolished at some time in the near future, or, you know, future, whatever that may be. So I'm not sure it can be answered, but that's the question, Bruce, we do not have answered yet. And we're trying to make this and put the city in the best possible position you can, even though it's 23 years after the lease should have been in writing. That's what we're trying to do.
Exactly, and that's what, at least this will get it in writing and get the process started. So I'm gonna make the motion that we approve this.
Okay, there's been a motion, there's a second.
What else were you wanting from us, Scott?
Yeah, to Bruce's point, specifically, and again, Mike and I have not finalized the language relative to the actual maintenance, but I guess the question would be, is the city willing to do upkeep to the property? Or are you going to try to shift that entirely to the tenant? That's really the question to answer. There can be a middling ground in there. We've tried to sort of lay that out of tenant being responsible for appliances, but city's responsible for roof, walls, electrical, boilers, things like that. There isn't a perfect answer, Bruce. It's really deciding how much upkeep you want as a council to put into this property, or to tell the tenant you're not going to do any more upkeep. That's really the question.
And there's a motion on the floor. We should have a second before discussion. Not Bruce off, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the motion was actually for as it's written.
To approve this contract as written.
Mike, are you asking us to approve this contract as it's written, or are you looking for guidance because you're going to write something and alter it?
No, as you recall from what I described when I was trying to summarize it, there's a number of paragraphs that we feel need additional work. And so, no, I'm not recommending the final document as it exists. And Scott's trying to clarify as we take a look at it that as the owner of the property, we're trying to be cognizant of the fact that we don't want to be a landlord that has a piece of property and basically just turns a deaf eye to taking care of the life and safety features that allows somebody to live in the property. We also don't really garner sufficient rent from the property to really undertake extensive major repairs or improvements. And so those pieces which we believe are the owner's own appliances would be her responsibility. But then as we take a look at the boiler and other elements, is how far do we really go and how do we define that under the contract because of the way that it's existed for all of these years. And so if there was any approval tonight, it should be done with the idea that we're able to work out modifications in those sections that I previously identified with the city attorney's office.
All right, then I'll withdraw my motion. Still out there.
So the way I understand it, would you bring us back with those changes, and then we can approve it then?
Yeah, I think maybe what we need to do this evening is to make a motion to move forward with the lease agreement as further revised by the city and the attorney, and then we can have a second reading of that lease agreement before we approve it for signature. And so that's, if that sits well with everyone, I'd like to make a motion to do just that.
Second.
There's a motion and second. Any other discussion?
Can you clarify just to make sure I understand what Maggie?
Maggie, basically, the way I understand it, you directed city staff to go ahead and enter into this. I'm gonna let you do it.
So what I made a motion is to move forward with the lease agreement, not yet to signature, move forward with the lease agreement for additional revisions, and so that the council can get a second read on it once it's been revised in red lines.
And that's what I understood too.
So
It's
that
on,
any other concerns that the city and Scott have can be addressed.
Okay.
And Rick seconded it. Is there any other discussion or clarifications that anybody needs?
This is Maggie, and the only thing I want to point out is section 3A. It's just, I think, an error in the dollar amount of the rent as it's written out. So once you go through your red lines, hopefully that's caught.
duly noted.
I would just comment too that Mike or Scott could consider putting a dollar amount of maintenance that might be available on a given year, and then anything above that, beyond that, could be the tenant expense. That way they know if something serious happens, they have an issue that might want them to move or get out. Just be very upfront about it and take advantage of the opportunity to have a good discussion with them.
Okay, any other discussion or questions? Otherwise,
Just a quick,
go ahead.
I got a quick one. Mike, this is the first time that we've come up with this strong of a lease? Or even a lease?
We have no other residential rental leases that we manage. The utilities has one, but this is the only one that we have in the city. We have no other residential rental properties.
No, I think you were asking, this is the first time with Elman, right?
I'm sorry, did I misunderstand your question, Sean?
No, it was all garbled. I was having experienced network connection difficulties. So I think I got the gist of what Mike said though. So.
Okay.
This is better than anything we've ever had before, I guess, so.
We have no other residential rental properties.
No, I understand that, so maybe you didn't understand. So we've never, something like this has never been presented to council before. I know we've had discussions every year on it, but we've never had anything as concrete as this?
No.
Okay. Or that we acted on?
No.
Okay, hearing no other discussion, Maggie?
Are you asking for a vote now?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry.
That's
Yes.
okay. Aye.
Okay, Rick?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Bruce?
Aye.
Jerry votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, thank you, Mr. Briggs. Briggs, you can go if you'd like.
Okay. Thank you. I think I've got the guidance that Mike and I need. We'll bring you back a new draft and go from there, and hopefully that's approved. So thank you.
All right, get out. Have a good night, Scott.
Okay, Mr. Cabot is up, I guess, Mike?
I'll turn this over to Ken.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I knew that we worked on it this afternoon, didn't we?
Yeah, so I'll just do a quick introduction for City Engineer Chris Cabot. He's got a quick few slides here to run through on the background of the state aid system and kind of the funding of the system. Our map of our state aid routes is included here as well. And then when Chris is done, I'll talk about the proposed contract for his annual state aid services for the state aid system. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Okay, well, first of all, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I have a son that decided he had to download something and I've been having some bandwidth issues, so. Mayor, members of the city council, first of all, Mayor, welcome. Nice to meet you. And I thank you all for, again, appointing me for city engineer. Definitely proud to serve as your city engineer. One of the services as the city engineer is the annual administration of the municipal state aid system. And again, the city basically became a municipal state aid city back in 2004 when the city reached a population of 5,000. So it's definitely a benefit that not all cities get to enjoy, and certainly has helped in some of the finances when it comes to the transportation system. As noted in the slide here, the municipal state aid system is basically the process where the highway users tax distribution fund is being able to assist or distribute funds to local governments, counties, and cities over population 5,000. It's to help finance those streets of community interest and of area interest, basically your higher volume roads. So basically, it's the state aid funds are collected by the state according to the Constitution and law and distributed to the highway users tax distribution fund and apportioned among the counties and cities. Again, the cities over 5,000, and used by the counties and cities for the aid and construction and improvement and maintenance of the county state aid highways and the municipal state aid streets. If we go to the next slide there, Ken. I believe this is in your packet. It's a pamphlet actually we get every year from MnDOT State Aid to help hand out, and of course hard to do at this time. But again, just it outlines again the highway users tax distribution fund. So it's more than just the gas fuel tax or gas tax. It's the funding is license fees, motor vehicle sales tax. And then the last one, if I recall correctly, I think this is one that got added a few years ago. We're basically taking sales tax off of auto parts was also added to the highway users fund. In 2020, the total highway users fund there was 2.5 billion. This is basically the funds that MnDOT, the counties, and state aid cities get. You go off to the lower than the regular funding. Again, 2.3 billion or 62% goes to the MnDOT, which is for the trunk highway system. Of course, they also receive funding from the federal government. Then there's the county state aid highway system. They receive 29% of the state aid funds, and municipal state aid funds receives 9%. It's apportioned by all the cities. If you go over to the last block there, there's 148 municipalities that now are just basically taking 210 million that's getting apportioned to those cities. I point out 148 municipalities. When the city New Prague joined the state aid system, there was about 133, I believe. So what happens is more cities reach 5,000, they join the system, and the pie gets cut up into more and smaller pieces. Those funds then are apportioned. 50% of the funds are apportioned by population, so equally amongst all the state aid cities by population. And the other 50% is divvied up or apportioned by a process to show some type of need based on traffic volumes needs for that community. If we go to the next slide there, Ken. So this is a quick summary of what I kind of just went over. 2.5 billion, 62% to the state, 29% to the counties, 9% to the cities. The cities themselves, 64% of them are out, or 64 of them are out in the greater Minnesota, and 84 are metro communities. And again, the distribution to the state aid cities is 210 million. Go to the next slide. I believe this is the map. So this map is a map showing all the roadways in the community, and all the ones in pink are municipal state aid streets. The way those are determined is the city is allowed to take 20% of all the local miles and designate that 20% onto streets that we want to define as municipal state aid streets. The one little exception here is the old County Road 37, if you all know where that's at, 10th Avenue and 7th Street. That actually was a turn back here in 2020 and actually got added on top of all our state aid streets. So our 20% of our state aid streets amounts to about 8 miles. Then we added about 1.5 miles from the county road turnback. And we assigned those to basically most of our higher volume roads with the most traffic, because that actually is, by the formula that's used, those get the most need. And when I talk about need, this is again one of the ways that some of the funds are apportioned. So when we can demonstrate more need, we get more portion of those funds. One little kind of interesting tidbit, 10th Avenue Southeast is one of our highest volume local roads. Back in about 2010, the city engineers got together and decided that because of the funding has kept going down and down and down, the process to apportion these funds was just getting too complex, and decided to simplify the system, and basically simplified it by just apportioning it really by traffic volume. So again, assigning the state aid streets to your higher volume roads. Before 2010, there was actually a strategy of you were actually looking at it, what streets needed to be improved. Younger streets didn't qualify for as much need as an older street. So 10th Avenue Southeast was one of our highest volume roads, and actually collected some of the lowest amount of need on that road because it was newly improved, even though it was higher volume, but it was a new road. When we changed the system, the city engineers changed the system in 2010 and phased it in over 5 years, there was a greater benefit to the communities that had roads with higher volume that might be new. And so we actually gained a lot of benefit from that when those changes took place. If we go to the next slide. So real quick in summary, again, apportioned by population, and the other 50% is apportioned by need, and need again calculated by, again, volume. The bigger, higher volume roads need to be bigger, wider, and can collect more money from the state aid system. What that equates to, the population equates to, as it shows there in that slide, about $26 per person is what's apportioned out to the state aid cities by population. In 2021, that is actually going to go down. It's going to be estimated at about $22 per person. And the reason is gas tax. People driving less because of COVID. The state aid, the highway distribution fund is collecting less money, and there's going to be less funds distributed in 2021. Down on the next highlights, New Prague 2021 needs based on the 9.6 miles of MSA miles. We estimate, the formula estimates or calculates out at about 15.4 million is what New Prague's needs are calculated at. It's a theoretical, like if we had to bring all our state aid system up to a certain standard, it would be about 15 some million to do it in 1 year, sort of supposedly. What that equates to is, based on the needs, is a little over $13 per $1,000 of needs is what we get distributed. It amounts to about 200 and some $1,000. What is interesting to show is in 1989, this was at the peak of the state aid system, cities were collecting about $65 per $1,000 of need. That's when the municipal state aid system, the state aid system, and the highway distribution fund was very healthy at that time. And as you all understand, $65 in 1989 bought you a lot more than $13 does in 2020. So if we go to the next slide, I threw this one in here. I thought this kind of sold the picture. This is if you just scroll up just a little bit there, yep. This is a graph that shows again what I was showing at that $13.09 per $1,000 of needs. This is a graph that shows a bar chart that shows what that the dollar amount per $1,000 of needs was in the past years and where we're at today. And I boxed in 2009 through 2013, because this was the year in 2008 was when the last time the gas tax was raised. And if you recall, the legislature overrode Palente's veto and did allow the gas tax to increase and phase it in over a 5-year period. And I added the red line there because of the years prior, you can see what the trajectory was of funding in the state aid system. While it's maintaining its own, of course, it's not increasing. The gas tax hasn't adjusted. We're not buying more and more for the tax dollar, but we're at least maintaining the dollars that are in the system. So I thought that was kind of an interesting comparison. So if we go to the next slide, just showing what it means to the city in terms of revenue on the state aid system. The 2020 allocation, I don't know what 2021 will be. We do have it projected here, but the 2020 allocation is 309,000. And the way that works is 25% of those funds are given annually directly to the city for maintenance. The city gets those, and those questions asked, they use it and they put it in their planning budget for maintenance of the roadway system. 75% of those allocation is actually put into a construction fund. That construction fund can only be utilized on state aid roads or on what we call off-system funding. As an example, we are using some off-system funding on the Main Street downtown project to fund a portion of the project that is the city share of that project. In this case, 293,000 is going into the construction fund in 2020. The estimated amount for 2021, as it's noted there, is projected to drop to about 350,000, about almost an 11% drop. This is again due to COVID. It's a projection for 2021. We'll find out here probably in the next couple of weeks what the city's allocation will be for 2021. I do like to point out the construction fund balance does adjust as we do take funds out of it. The last time we took funds out was in about 2015, 2012 before that, and then just this last year in 2020, we did draw some funds off that were again a portion of the city share of the Main Street downtown project. We were able to draw those out directly ahead of time right after the bid. And you've heard me tell this in the past that it's not good for us to save up into the fund to use the funds. The system actually has a nice benefit of actually being able to advance funds. So there's communities out there, for example, New Prague will have about 465,000 in the fund in 2021 that we won't be utilizing right away. So those funds can be borrowed by other communities. And so we have the ability to actually advance 5 times our annual allotment. And when we do that, we actually get a little more benefit from it. It's like a no interest loan. In fact, the way the formula works for calculating need, they actually calculate that you have a little more need because you're in a negative balance, and you actually collect a little more money in addition to that on an annual basis. So again, the funding is used for, again, the city state aid streets. We can use it on the county system if we have a cost participation that we have to utilize on that. And we can utilize those funds on the trunk highway system. Again, like we're doing on Main Street downtown project. Again, there's not a lot of dollars in this program. Again, the buying power has gone down, but so we're really utilizing and planning those funds to be utilized on local roads, the state aid streets, and supplementing that with assessments as needed. The next projects that we're expecting in 2022 and 2023, we're expected to utilize some funds at that time. We don't need to get into the last slide. I think it was in your packet, but it shows the balance since 2004 and projected balance going forward. Conservatively, again, what the projections will be in the future. So a little overwhelming at times, but I guess any questions on the municipal state aid system and what our duties are. I should just mention what our annual stuff is we have to annually submit mapping updates of any new roads that are completed. We do what we call a certification of miles. Again, verifying again the amount of streets that are in the roadway or in the city, in the community, how much is state aid roads. We have to submit an annual report of what we call needs. There's a couple of meetings that we attend both in the spring and in the fall with MnDOT. Again, this program is administered by the city engineers, all city engineers, both consulting and public city engineers. So it's administered by them, but overseen by the MnDOT state aid program. And that's how it's governed by the legislature. So with that, I guess any questions?
Yeah, Bruce.
Chris, the number you mentioned for 22-23, the advance, that's 2 million, the two together about $2 million. Is that an identified road, or are you just, is that a placeholder?
Right now it is an identified road. So if you want to flip to the map real quick, can back up. It's First Street northeast. So First Street Northeast is part of a project that we've identified in the capital improvements plan for 2022 and 2023. So that's, we've estimated in the capital improvements plan some funding from the state aid system on that. And it would require an advance on using the funds that are there as well as some additional advance to cover that. As well as assessments, so.
Chris, wheelage tax that let's say Scott and East Shore County have, is that just that doesn't figure into this at all? The cities don't benefit from, can you explain that? I'm sorry, it might be off the track, but we don't benefit with that county wheelage tax. It just, do we?
No, that's a great question. So again, back to the idea that the funding has just gotten diluted and diluted. Counties have gone to implementing wheelage tax, aggregate taxes, and a number of other things that, to try to help with the highway funding. I don't know of any cities that have that. I don't know if legally by the legislature if that's even allowed for local government or for cities, or any city that would do that. Where the city benefits from the wheelage tax in Scott County, for example, is we do have a CASA routes in the community. We did accommodate one of the CASA routes as a turnback, but they're inevitably going to redesignate another route somewhere near the community as another CASA route. And again, that's where they would utilize some of that funding.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, the recommendation is?
If I could, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Sorry. As far as Chris's proposal, his proposal for the state aid services is in the packet. And I do want to note that he actually is proposing a decrease of $800 from the 2020 contract amount. 550, that was actually carryover credit from 2020, and then additional reduction for the 2021 year here. So you want to recognize that it is a reduced amount from the 2020 contract. One additional thing shown in here is if County State Aid Highway 15 with Scott County is turned back, there could be, and Chris is just estimating it as a $3,000 fee for his involvement in those discussions with the county on if that is turned back to the city here in 2021. That's just kind of a little bit of an unknown, but again, can be paid for through these maintenance dollars that we get that essentially does cover the cost of the program.
Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, would somebody like to offer a motion on this proposal?
Yeah, so moved, Dwayne.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, Bruce, thank you, Bruce. So there was a motion and a second on the adoption of the municipal state aid street and engineering services proposal by SCH. With that, Maggie?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Bruce?
Aye.
And Dwayne does aye also. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay. Now we're up to personnel actions. Mike?
All right, thank you, Mayor. That in front of you, this first action is the recommendation on an appointment and subsequent promotion of Matt Rinda to the Public Works Director position. That after tonight, I'm not sure that Glenn really wants to retire, but this might have just sealed up reinforcing that decision earlier. But with the notice that I received from Glenn back around Thanksgiving, he indicated that he was looking at retiring effective February 25th of this year. In accordance with our personnel policy that we have the abilities to take a look at sending those notifications on pending vacancies to advertise it internally within the organization in an opportunity to recruit within the organization. I made the posting on this for 5 business days, only received 1 application, which was from Mr. Rinda. It was reviewed, evaluated, and I scheduled an interview. I invited both Mr. Ondich and Mr. Reimers to sit in and participate in the interview process with me, but we met with Matt, and as I had taken a look at the qualifying criteria for the position and going through the interview, it's my recommendation here this evening that I'm recommending that he be promoted to that position effective February 26th of 21. Matt's been with the city street department for 19 plus years, since August of 2001. I'm not sure what it is with the guys in the street departments that I think Glenn started out of high school, and I think Matt has started out of high school. I'm beginning to think that that's something that just exists within the street department, but these guys have both spent a considerable amount of time with the city. April 2013, or a little over 7 years ago, when we promoted Glenn to Public Works Director, at that same time, we promoted Matt to Public Works Supervisor. And so taking a look at his extensive knowledge of city maintenance practices in the public works operations, his positive working relationships with other city departments and interactively with outside consultants, his planning and follow through on projects or construction projects have all been very extensive. He's had great positive interactions in handling of public works related complaints and resolving them with the public. And then finally, his extensive knowledge of the city for the last 19 plus years, in my mind, makes this kind of an easy selection and recommendation for me. And so as part of my recommendation, I've kind of listed out some caveats that would go with this, that it would be effective essentially the day after Glenn leaves, which is February 25. Matt would begin on February 26th, that he be placed at grade 14, step 1, on the city's compensation plan at the rate of $43.69 an hour. We'd have a 90-day probationary period for the promotion, that he participate and successfully complete this year. There's with the Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association, a leadership academy or an executive leadership development course that I think would be very beneficial for Matt to participate in. And so I'm wanting him to participate. There's 4 quarterly meetings that would begin with this program. And so I think he would benefit long-term by participating in this, that he'd be authorized to take the public works vehicle as a take home, that, essentially being on call as the public works director. Glenn happened to live out of town, so it wasn't as convenient to do it with him. But in having Matt get started, kind of like we have with our utilities general manager or the chief of police, where they're on call and accessible to be called out middle of the night, whether it be during the winter or, other public times, or, depending on the event with a sewer backup or anything of that nature, that he have the abilities to take that vehicle home, and that I conduct a 6-month evaluation in September of 21. And so it's my recommendation with those conditions that I recommend Matt be appointed to this position.
Mike, I got a couple questions for you. Did you ever get the total SEH bills or averages that we spend with SEH? Because just for the council's benefit, I had asked if we shouldn't be looking at a public engineer at this point, somebody who can sign off on everything for us and bring that position in-house. Sorry, Chris, maybe you'd want to apply for it if we go that direction, but it might make sense that we're getting to that point of almost 10,000 population, and it really goes back, and the reason I brought that up, and just so for clarification, maybe you can explain, Mike, in 2013, seemed like it was rushed at that time as well, but when Dennis Sawyer left, all of a sudden we split, Glenn and Bruce up into 2 distinct areas. So now we had 2 people doing essentially the one job. And then, of course, that's when Matt moved up, and then we had Kenny move up, and then other supervisor layers, not on the public works, but in the utilities area. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't just look at, and again, this feels a little rushed too, in the sense that you didn't give us any other options. Matter of fact, to be perfectly honest, I over the holidays happened to speak to 4 different city employees who said, well, I asked them, why didn't you apply for it? And they basically said, well, it was in the paper that Matt was going to get it. I mean, why should I even apply? And then I thought back to what you even said at the council meeting was, we have a great internal candidate that we think will be great for this position, or something, I'm paraphrasing, but something to that effect during the council meeting. And that just dissuaded a lot of other city employees from even going for that job, because it seemed like it was already in Matt's wheelhouse. And Matt, this by no means is nothing against you. It's about the process that Mike or Glenn or somebody, I think that we should have done a little differently and due diligently, and maybe even looked at, certainly given Matt a leg up, but we should have maybe thrown it out to the public, not just internally, for a position of this caliber, and also looking at maybe even hiring a public engineer to oversee that, see the whole umbrella like Dennis did. So we don't have to have different directors, and we just have supervisors, and let alone the benefit of that guy being able to sign off and not having to pay an outside firm. I know there's $20,000 in, was it wastewater, that for a study that we have to do that a public engineer needs to sign off on. Whether that's Chris or not, I don't know, but that's why I asked those questions.
You threw an awful lot on the table, and I don't know how much time you want me to take to answer all those, but let me go back to the time 7 years ago when we dealt with having to deal with the replacement of Dennis. And no, we didn't have to react to that real quickly. If you remember, we did a study and analysis to take a look at the job duties and responsibilities that Dennis was not only in charge of the water and the electric departments, but he was also in charge of all of the public works departments, from the street to the wastewater to the parks and all of the governmental buildings. And what it was determined at that point in time, after all of that analysis, is that really that was too many job functions to be conducted and under the responsibility of one individual, which is why the job ultimately ended up being split into the utilities general manager, who's in charge of the water and the electric, and we split off the public works director to be in charge of the streets and the wastewater, the governmental buildings, and parks and those other elements. So that was a very conscious decision by the council to make that split and to divide out those responsibilities. And we've operated that way for the last 7 years. When you talk about whether this should be an engineering position, and you and I had the conversation that at the present time, I don't think that we have enough year in and year out projects to warrant having to elevate this position and to pay somebody at an engineering level. And I can assure you that what we're paying for our director of public works position, you would not get a public works director that has an engineering degree for anywhere close to what we have as our public works director position. If you recall, going back to our annual work that we contract out and that we do with SEH, is that when we contract with Chris and pay him for his city engineering duties, all he's doing is the design of a public improvement for streets and wastewater and storm sewer, and that's all that he's doing as part of that economic assignment. So for us to hire somebody and say that's all they're going to do, then the question becomes is, okay, who's going to oversee and take care of all of the other related functions that our public works director position has been doing? And we did projects up until, I believe it was the year 2015, and then we took time off for 16, 17, 18 until we returned with the County Road 37 project in 19, and then the work that we've been doing under the Main Street project here in 2020 and now 21. And so when you take a look at those construction projects, you're not going to be able to pay somebody to fulfill all of the duties and responsibilities that go with the job description for a public works director and still do all of the engineering work. And so in my opinion, no, I'm not ready to recommend that. If you recall, we talked about what were we going to do 7 years ago coming forward to attempt to put ourselves in a position to not end up like we did in 2013. And so, yes, when we put Matt in the position of being the public works supervisor, Glenn has been working with him over the last 7 years to learn different facets of the public works position and to be involved in projects to gain experience so that someday he could take over. In Matt's capacity as the public works supervisor, he has had added responsibilities that none of the other employees in the public works street department have had to do for the last 7 years in a supervisory capacity. So in taking a look at it, whether it was on the street, and you've asked us the question, is yes, we have been working and grooming Matt to be able to eventually step into this position. Others certainly would have been free to apply, but because they didn't have at least any kind of supervisory experience, likely they would not have met kind of the minimum qualifications for the position. Certainly we could have gone out and advertised this, and if after reviewing Matt's credentials and in going through the interview process, if I didn't feel that Matt wasn't capable of assuming taking on the responsibilities of this position, then there's no question that yes, I would have looked at going out to advertise for the position.
Well, Mike, hold on a second. I'm not saying Matt isn't qualified. This isn't about Matt. It's about the process. And if we as a council are doing the correct thing by just narrowly focusing for literally the second highest, or one of the highest positions in the city, are we doing our due diligence? This has nothing to do with Matt. I think Matt's great. He's well liked. I know he is. He's a hard worker. I do have some questions on, if I read the job description, if he's there, and maybe that goes back to the leadership thing that you want him to take, that some of that can be filled. But this isn't about Matt. It's about the process and how we split these two departments where everything was working fine with one, and then we had two supervisors and then workers, and then all of a sudden, when we split that into two departments, all of a sudden there was like 7 people that moved up. You know, upgrades, up everything else, and that costs the city taxpayers a lot of extra money, because every grade they move up, as you know, produces a, you know, so I just want to know if we did our due diligence instead of just almost narrowing in on Matt and giving it. And Matt, again, it's not about you, it's about the process that I'm a little worried about.
If you go back 7 years ago when we had the discussion, and if you remember, we did an outside study and a report that was presented to the council at that time. Everything was not working very well. And so where we went from one position to 2 positions, that was the reason that ended up getting split up that way, is because after reviewing all of the input from employees, from the public, and doing the evaluation, things were not working well because everything was centered in one position and there was too much there, and the individual was basically overwhelmed with having too much responsibility and insufficient time to do well with all of the facets under his responsibilities. So I can certainly provide you with a copy of that report if you need a refresher on that, but things were not working well, which is why the council chose to split that up.
Okay. I'll take your word for it. And I'm not trying to argue with you. I mean, what I'm trying to get at is, are we doing our due diligence by not exploring every possibility of and narrowing in on one individual? And it happens to be you, Matt, and I'm sorry about that. Whether we open it up to really review a lot of different people, and certainly I'm all about internal candidates should get extra points or something. I don't know if you do a point system during the interviews or whatever. They should have some leg up on it. But I'm just wondering if there isn't a better way. And we weren't given any options. That's what I like. You know, it was like the CARES money that you got. I mean, all of a sudden it was, here's our proposal, you guys vote on it. Thankfully, we pulled a lot of stuff out there. But again, we weren't given options. Are we going to build ball fields with it, or do this or do that, to tear down this, add this? It was just like, here's our proposal. And that's why I wanted to see if we could get the process in place. And I don't think I've ever seen an organizational chart. Do we have an org chart for the city? Is that something you can provide to the council?
We can.
Well, I'm always looking for for efficiencies and potential savings and whatever else. And I'm sorry if I'm asking tough questions. I want people to know that, yeah, we need these people in this position. I mean, I was just doing a quick thing.
And I'm certainly more than happy to answer all these questions. I don't have a tough time answering those questions. In taking a look at the opportunities when confronted with this, is either we make an initial determination that yes, we think we have viable candidates internally, and we consider handling that through a promotion. If I don't think that opportunity exists, then we would open it up and advertise publicly to fill that position.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then. I mean, so if Matt was the guy, and I'm going to vote for him anyways. I mean, we're in this situation. I think it's almost too late to do it again. I think we should maybe review the process of as you've stated that you could be going soon, Patty could be going soon. You know, these department heads. Jim maybe is going soon. Yeah, we all have probably good candidates internally there that I can't say I don't like about it, but I'm just thinking bigger term, if we should be reviewing this and I'll just bring up something with Matt. So looking at the job description, you know, I don't know if Matt's ever spent time in the wastewater treatment plant. I don't know if he's ever analyzed plans and infrastructure improvements, ability, I should have probably highlighted this, but specifications for construction of wastewater and sewer facilities, let alone public works infrastructure improvements. I mean, I don't know if he's done all that stuff. I don't know if you know, Glenn did a lot of the wastewater treatment analyzing plans and specifications. I mean, we kind of hired that out, but if we had a public engineer or a public engineer, that could be done in-house and we wouldn't have to worry about it.
But when you start to take a look at doing some of those things, is most of those end up being on a project by project basis. Those aren't part of the general everyday duties and responsibilities. And so he would be involved in working with, if we had something occur in the wastewater, that's where we typically have used Bolton and Mink, who is our wastewater consultant, to take a look at either any of the specialized studies or undertaking any construction projects, just like we did this past year when we worked with Bolton and Mink on the replacement of the whole biosolids project at the wastewater plant. That isn't something that Glenn oversees or that Matt would oversee per se, that the expertise associated with creating all of that is done by the consulting engineering. Our staff works with those people, but no, they are not the engineers on the job to do that. Their job is to work with those people and to ensure that whatever the project is at hand ultimately gets constructed and gets built and produces the outcome that we authored the project in the first place. So it's just like we work with Chris Cavett on construction right now. Glenn doesn't design the street improvement project, nor would Matt. That's Chris's expertise. But when we go to doing the construction or in the design work, yes, there's significant input from Glenn and Matt, and on the water side, it could be Bruce, and on the electric side, he gets input from any of his staff. And so we bring in the appropriate staff working with the consulting engineer on the design of that. And then they're all typically involved when we go to the construction side of things, is that the engineer is responsible to do all of the major inspection, but our staff is ensuring that things are getting built in accordance with the plans and they're getting recorded properly, so that when we have to go back and do maintenance, that they know where things are at and are able to oversee that when that needs to happen. So
if I may interject a little bit here, Sean, to answer your question on a couple of the points that you brought up. You know, you hire an engineering firm to design a set of plans. As a public works director or supervisor, being really anybody in any other department, then reviews those plans and tweaks them. Because sometimes, most times, the engineer will design something, but you know, in your city, on that street, in this area, that's not going to work. So there's where you, as a public works director, supervisor, you interject at that point and go, this is not going to fly. Well, then sometimes it's a discussion on why the engineer thinks it's going to work and why the city personnel doesn't think it's going to work, and we figure out a way that's going to make it work. In your point, as far as a city engineer, I don't know that you could hire a city engineer that would know anything about a wastewater plant. That's kind of a whole different engineering animal. So, you know, most city engineers of communities around us, most of them don't have their own water plants, their own wastewater plants. If they do, I'll pick on Prior Lake. I know Prior Lake well. They have city engineer. The city engineer has an assistant city engineer, and then there's a public works director. But the city engineer in Prior Lake does not design or work on the water plants. They hire a consulting firm or another engineering firm to design the water plant. They might oversee it at some point, but I don't know that you could find that one person that would fill all those shoes or as many areas as we have, being electrical, wastewater, water. New Prague's kind of unique in all the different departments that we do have. So to hire one to handle it all, I'm not sure you could even find that person.
I don't know, Chris, you got a comment on that? Is there a guy as a public engineer that can sign off on water and utilities and lift stations and studies for the state and everything else that we pay $20,000 for?
Streets, infrastructure, all that stuff.
Chris, could you sign off on that? Yeah, I was just curious, as a public engineer, can you sign off on anything else besides streets? I mean, wastewater trans, lift stations, utilities.
Let me comment. The thing that happens with a community, a small community that has a city engineer, whenever it's appropriate, they become strictly a manager. And anytime there is infrastructure work that needs to be done, they're going to be managing consultants.
Okay.
Literally, that's it. And if I could answer a question you had, Sean, actually, that maybe shed a little light. There's two services that I provide, well, three services that I provide that are strictly what I'll call city engineering. It's really the miscellaneous call from staff or whatever on an issue that might need to be solved. I look quickly and I average about 4,000 a year. The other is the state aid stuff that we just went over. That's about 6,000 a year. And then the rest is developer reviews and things like that. And that's been averaging about 3,000 a year. So that's literally it. And it's so city engineer would take on that, and then they'd be a manager of consultants. That's what it would be. So yeah, they would not be an expert. And you keep in mind that I have a team of dozens of people that are working on a project. So you just see me, but there's a team behind me of a dozen people.
Okay, well, that answers that then. So I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you.
Hey, Sean, as a construction worker for 30 years, whenever you're training somebody in, when I have an apprentice, I train them so that if something happens to me, there's somebody there that can complete a job. So if you look at somebody like Matt, who's been working with Glenn all this time, the job was posted, Matt put in on it, nobody else did. Everybody else knew about the job, but they still didn't sign up for it. It was Matt that signed up for it.
Right.
Okay, so I know we can change the process and everything, but right now Matt is on the table for the job. He was the only one that applied. But I do agree with you. We can work on the system, but these managers are grooming these people for a reason. So let's take care of Matt, and then if you want to change the process, get together with Mike. Mike can put it on the next agenda, and we'll discuss this. But for now, let's move this along.
Yeah, I know you're jonesing for a cigarette, Rick. I know that.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to do that. But listen, I wanted to get the council's feedback on this. Should we be given options other than just narrowly focusing in? And again, this isn't about Matt. Matt, you just happen to be in the bad position, Matt, of coming up before this. I've thought about this for years, ever since we split the thing apart, and whether that was the right thing to do or not. Because I felt at that time we weren't given any options either. And all I like is different options that I think the council should be aware of that are out there. Turns out that the public engineer might not have been the right move for this thing. As I said earlier, I was going to vote for you anyways because I know you, I know your history, but I just wanted to see if the process shouldn't be changed, and then we can drop it at that. I'm just kind of curious what Maggie and Dwayne and Bruce think about if this process was the right way to go about it. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm the only one, but I just wanted to ask the question.
Well, I think in this particular instance with Matt, I like the process. I like the fact that Matt has been with the city for 19 years. He's been working under Glenn. And Rick, you're right. I mean, it's a wonderful way to learn and to groom that person into that next position. And this happens in the private sector all the time. I work for a very large organization, and we much prefer to hire within than to go outside. We know we've got good people, they're qualified, and we owe it to those good people for them to be able to be promoted within the organization. If this position becomes so much that Matt is not able to handle it and additional people are needed, at that point, then maybe the city is growing to the point where we need to do something different. But I think for now, I like what just happened.
Okay.
The county has a policy of offering internally prior to posting outside. And if they can find an internal candidate, they go that way before they post outside. I've worked for a couple public organizations. City of Missouri was the same way. If they had part-time police officers that were eligible and qualified, that they could move up, they offered them the position before advertising and going through the process. So I had a police chief one time tell me, he says, if they're not good enough to hire part-time, or they're not good enough to work full-time, meaning that we hire them like they're full-time to start with. So I've always kind of lived by that because it's kind of rings true. So that's my 2 cents. Anybody else?
My opinion, I think what I'm taking from you, Sean, is that I think it's totally okay to reevaluate and constantly look at how you administer your services. And if there's better ways to do it, different job positions, different departments and things like that. From a macro standpoint, and look at that. In this situation, I don't, that's a bigger picture type of project if we want to take that on. But I don't have any particular issue with this, filling this position or having this position. If we want to have that discussion later on, that we should restructure city government, how we are structured and what we want to do. That's kind of what I hear you saying. That's something that can be talked about, but I don't feel that in this time period we should be talking about it for this position. Anyway.
Yeah, and thank you, Bruce, for your comments. I wasn't, like I said, I was going to vote for Matt anyways. I just wanted to get this on the table because it could be Jim, it could be Patty, it could be, all these other department heads that could be leaving here shortly. And it might take some time to get, instead of just anointing somebody, that how this should look and how we should evaluate different individuals. And certainly I'm all for promoting from within. I want to reiterate that. I think that they should get extra points during an interview and whatnot, but I think, opening it up and instead of just saying, yeah, we got one good internal candidate and it dissuades other people from applying. That was where I got a little concerned on the way it was presented. It was like, why even bother? So that's good to know. I'm curious where you guys were. We can move on now, and I got my piece out.
Okay, so with that, I would look for a motion to appoint and promote Matt Ringo to Public Works Director, effective February 26th, 2021.
So moved.
Rick made the motion.
Second. Bruce, second.
Bruce made the second. Any other discussion?
I would just like to make a comment. I did do my own due diligence, and I found different discussions with different city staff that really supported Matt and made reference to his good work. So I stand in support of the motion.
Okay. All in favor, Maggie?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Sean?
I'm going to say aye, and I'll follow with Bruce. I heard nothing but good things. It was about the process, not Matt. It wasn't.
Bruce?
Aye.
And Jurek, aye. Just remember, when it's slippery, I want the street in front of my house salted nicely. Just kidding.
I'm sure mine won't be plowed at all now.
Yeah, I know. I probably jinxed myself. All right,
Was that a suggestion or a direct order?
no, that was just maybe I'll give you a couple donuts. Okay. Promotion of Robert Brzezina.
We can pull this one off the agenda. You will not need to act on this tonight. We've got a vacancy that has occurred over on the electric distribution arena. Bruce advertised it internally, interviewed 3 candidates. Is he still on tonight? I could let him tell you, but is that, it's Keith Barta's position, correct?
Yes, so I had one of my generation operators leave for a full-time position in the military. So I posted the position within the city, and we had 3 candidates apply. And so Bob Brzezina has given me a verbal that he's going to take my position there. So this position here with the position change with the city will not be necessary.
Okay. All right.
We can take this one off for any consideration.
Next up is the discussion of liquor license fees for 21 and 22. And you see that there's some people here in the audience that we recognize them. So, Mike?
The council had discussion at the December 21st meeting when the issue was raised by one of our local liquor establishments asking how the city might handle it if the business chose to basically to reopen and begin operations where it would put him in violation of the governor's executive order. He was at that meeting asking about what the city might do. Throughout part of that discussion, recognizing the challenges that our liquor establishments have encountered here in 2020 from going back in the early part of the year and more specifically here at the end of the year with the requirement that they be closed for November and December here into early January. I believe there was a request and I see him in attendance. He's still here patiently after nearly 3 hours. I'm sure this is probably the longest council meeting he's ever attended, and that's Mr. Steve Duban from Flipside, that he had inquired of the council that in recognition of some of the challenges that the business establishments encountered is that could there be anything done by the council in taking a look at either some credit to the 2020 liquor licenses or some change in the upcoming 21 liquor license. As background, so we don't lose it, our 21-22 liquor licenses begin here on April 1st and they run through March 31st. So the current liquor licenses that we have that started last April 1 will now be expiring here in a couple of months here at the end of March. Included in your packet is you asked whether we could have some information available for you to at least have some discussion and some debate about whether you gave any consideration to making any modifications to the liquor licenses or doing something with them. I included in your packet information that liquor licenses in total in the city generate about $34,000 in annual revenue that goes into the city's general fund. And of that 34,000, 27,000 or nearly 80% of that comes from 11 licenses, or excuse me, 10 licenses that are the intoxicating liquor licenses that are either the bars or it's a combination bar restaurant with that intoxicating liquor license. 9 of them also have Sunday liquor, which is about $200. And so we provided information on what the cost of our liquor licenses are. And then we provided information to you as to each of the various liquor establishments in the community and what type of licenses that they have and the total aggregate that is paid. That colored chart that you have in your packet, I can't take claim for creating, but Barb has done a wonderful job on that so that every time we go to dealing with liquor licenses, one quick glance at this chart tells me the status and the condition of everything that I need to know when I go to take a look at liquor licenses. So she put that together, and that was very easy to make available to you for tonight's discussion. So in taking a look at it, it's really kind of up to the council to take a look at this, ask us any questions, see what you might want to do. It is kind of imperative as you take a look at it, however, that we're getting ready to mail out the liquor license renewal packets here probably within the next week or so. And so if you're contemplating something, it depends on whether you're going to make available any type of reduction based on what occurred in 2020 and whether you're going to apply that to the 21, 22 liquor licenses. And if there is a change, that we're able to pick that up in our fees resolution that's going to follow this agenda item, so that if there's a necessity to make changes in those licenses or license amounts, that we're able to get that taken care of before we mail out all those materials to all of the liquor establishments. So, you know, we weren't given direction on what you wanted to do, but I think we've brought the information to you to at least have a dialogue and discussion. I would step back and wait and see what questions or information that that you might have. We know the governor is supposed to be announcing, I believe it's tomorrow at 2 o'clock, what might be coming as it relates to being able to reopen or partially reopen. We're not certain of the restaurants and bars in the coming weeks, and so we don't have any idea what that's going to be. But there is likely news coming forward tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, thoughts from the council?
I had a question, Mike. Was there any allowance or anything done last year with any of the license fees? Do we?
I don't think so.
No, you have not done anything that when you say last year was our calendar year fiscal year, but the liquor licenses covered April 1 through this March 31st. But all of the fees in order to receive liquor licenses had to be paid up front back, I think, by the time we brought those to the council. They were paid in February of last year, and there has been no repayment or portion of some payment or anything of that nature at this point.
So we charged the full amount and did not rebate anything or discount?
Correct.
Well,
Okay.
no, that the year has gone on, and the license fees were all paid ahead of the licenses becoming effective on April 1st. And then it was about that time when we started having the COVID and then the decisions at a point in, what was it, in that April, May time period, that there were certain restrictions on who could be open and what you could do, and starting shortly thereafter, whether it was indoors and outdoors or just outdoors, that, there's been so many changes that have occurred over the course of the year that no, there has been nothing that the council has done relative to the payment of any of those fees.
It was March 17th, Mike, to be perfect, or to be exact. It was St. Patty's Day that they closed down and didn't reopen until middle of June. Is that right, Steve?
How long? Turn on your mic, Steve, if you can.
June 10th, I think, was when they allowed outdoor.
Yeah, do a mic checker. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it was somewhere around there, Dwayne. I'm trying to remember when they did, I think they went to 50%. Had to be right around June. It's been so long, sorry.
And then how long were you open till the next?
Yeah, we were open for in-site dining at the 50% capacity until was it like you said, November then, Mike? Yeah, November, and then he carried it to December, and then he extended it to January, so the last 60 days, right before Thanksgiving, if I remember right.
Okay.
Just, and I brought this up with, at the meeting, like Mike said here, the last meeting, I did, just to bring us up to speed, Mr. Mayor, I know you're new, and just to bring everybody up to speed, I shared with the council at the last meeting, I'm just a, going on 18 years here, just a small little business in this town. And my year-end numbers, I'm down $195,000 gross sales. And I'm just one little small place in your town, in this small little city, in this big state. I was able, after some really good due diligence and some aggressiveness with my insurance carrier, Illinois Casualty, they were able to reduce my premium by $252. Well, yeah, so they're a day late and a dollar short, but it took me months and months to support them with ST1 sales tax form, just revenue month over month, quarter over quarter, half over half, and they finally reduced my liquor liability, obviously, and then my work comp, because I'm down in wages, as far as payroll. So I presented just with Mike and the council last time, it's like, maybe a credit, if you want to maintain your other Sunday 200, off sale 200, but the on sale intoxicating 2,700 is the one that I would say, hey, if the city council could find it to just cut us a little break, that's kind of what I was after, just to help us out a little bit, because I'm in a position if the governor doesn't open us back up to 50%. I never thought after 18 years of fighting a fire, a divorce, that the government would be the one to kill me. I mean, I'm trying to provide an excellent service to this community, and with that, I just I don't know if I'd even would apply for a liquor license in 2021 if something doesn't take.
Okay.
Some should take pretty soon. Hey, can I suggest something?
Sure.
Instead of going back, it's going to be kind of difficult to figure out if we go back like that. If we were to take just on the on sale liquor, that's just the over the bar sales, and reduce their fee by 25%, how bad would that affect the city? Mike, you're probably going to have to report on that one.
25% of the 2,700? Is that what you're
asking? Yeah, that would, the 27,000, yep. Oh, the 2,700 per license, yes.
Well, I would feel that if we were going to discuss some type of a reduction, it should be across the board to all of the businesses, because they have all suffered from
not the off sale though. The off sale is actually benefited.
the off sale. You're right, Bruce. And the off sale is what, 100 per. So
yeah, I would support on sale reduction and even more than 25, even.
I was thinking 50, but I was thinking 50.
You were thinking 50?
Yeah.
How about you, Bruce? What was your number?
I mentioned 52, or at least, I don't know if that represents how much you were closed. Was it 50% of a 12-month period?
Well, I kind of scribbled it, so they were closed from March, April, May, and then
November, December, January.
Yeah, so 6 months about, give or take a few days, give or take a week.
I had heard there was a city, I think it was down by Rochester, they cut their fees 50% and then didn't make the license payable until August 1st to give them more time to get up and running, pay some of the back bills and just delay the payment too. So I would support 50% reduction on the on-premise and then delay the liquor license fee, the 50% fee until August 1st.
Well, I support the 50%. I'm not sure I like the delay though. That doesn't seem to.
I agree, Bruce.
They're getting the benefit of the
Why?
license.
Why? I mean, it helps the retailer, and it doesn't, whether we get it in April or August doesn't really affect our city budget too much. I mean, it's still going to go against the same one.
Are you doing that, thinking, let me think about that, Sean.
What does it matter if it's April or August? I mean, I'm just curious where you guys is.
Sean,
Well, you're
there's,
getting the benefit of a license and operating without a license, and you don't have any consideration if you don't pay for the license.
oh.
I'd rather discount it more than have them pay it.
Yeah. See, and that was a question I had to Mike earlier, if we could legally issue a license without a fee.
Some fees are set by statute.
Yeah.
I don't believe the on sale is a hard number set by statute. So if you were going to give them a break on that, but I know when we submit 4 licenses, they have to be paid in full, and everything has to be set to go. That's when they get submitted to the state, and the state signs off and authorizes the license then.
So that was my question, is the state gonna approve it if there was no fee paid? And I don't want to get somebody into hot water thinking we're doing a good thing. I think we can set the fee at any number, is that correct?
Well, as you just heard Chief Garais indicate that the consumption and display license is a license amount that is directly set by the state, so that is not our choice. The on-sale liquor is our choice. The off-sale liquor, Jim, do you know, is that one state or is that us?
It may be state. I'm not sure. I'd have to look for sure, but that one might be designated also.
I think Sunday liquor at $200. Something tells me that I think that's statutory, that's not the local choice either. That it's really the big one, the on-sale liquor. We've got the off-sale, the 3-2 on-sale malt liquor that we've got for the Knights of Columbus and the Strike Force Bowl. I'd be guessing if I tried to answer that right off the top of my head right now without going back to look at some of those more specifically.
If it's strictly the council's suggestion that we do 50% discount on any fees that we can for alcohol, that we're able to do that for. But you did already speak about off sale should not be affected by a discount.
Right. We just want the on sale to get the 50%. But Sean, I'm with you on that because I'm just thinking, well, these other ones, they're going to have to pay down and they're not making any money right now.
I can't remember what city it was. I can maybe try to find out, but I heard it through the industry that's what one of the councils had decided. So maybe they decided in error and found out that they couldn't do it, but.
Right. Because I can get Jim's point on it, but that would sure be nice if we could do it that way. But if they're going to require the money right up front.
Well, I think okay. But okay.
We can check on that also. I can check on that tomorrow. We have 2-3 months before it's actually due right now. So
Steve, you know what we're working on. Can we table this? Would you be all right with us tabling this, bud? Because we're working on it because the 50% sounds good. I think we all agree on that. I like that idea. If we could delay that. So yeah, Jim, check on that. and then we'll pass this next week or next meeting.
Well,
Yeah.
Rick, just from my point, Rick, I don't support delaying it. I would rather reduce it to 25% and have it paid than have a license being issued without being paid.
Yeah, Bruce, point taken, but Sean's point is taken pretty good too, because
How
what he
about-
was,
No, just wait one at a time.
what he was insinuating is that some of these guys, if you take somebody like Checkers, they're not making any money at all. So when they go to put that money down and they don't have it, I mean, so I can see where his point, where he was thinking. And that's what I was just trying to get figured out. But I understand you're not liking it. But if those bars that have to put that money down next month don't have the money to put down on it, that's where there might be an issue. You know, that was the only thing that I was.
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. And from an economic development, I would rather have somebody committed, whether it's $200 or $500. I support any kind of discount, even more than that. But just delaying it and have them operate without having a paid license, it just doesn't.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and if they require it just to get their license, then there's nothing we can do.
But this is a very good way that we can at least target some help for someone that's been directly affected. So I totally support it, and to any amount that the council agrees to.
Okay, I'm just gonna bring something up. Jim, can you find out and email the council what those statutory ones that have to be paid at the time of?
All of the fees, in order to submit the application to the state, is we have to have the application, the proof of insurance, the fees paid, the council's approval before we can submit the package of licenses to the state of Minnesota. And from a
Well, if that's the answer, why don't we just do the 50% right now?
Just wait. There's other people here that want to talk.
And so in that process, that's why the applications would be going out here probably within the next week, letting the liquor establishments know what's coming. They have to submit it, Barb, what is it, by mid-February, so that we can get everything processed, that we do the background checks through the police department. We verify that the insurance is in place, that the utilities are paid and up to date, that property taxes are paid and up to date. And then we bring that into the council at the first meeting in March so that we can submit that to the state of Minnesota, because it takes them several weeks to review and approve, to get those licenses back and the authorization, so that we can send out the licenses to the businesses by the end of March so that they're ready to go April 1. So this doesn't just happen overnight. And so if it is your intent, I guess I would encourage is do a reduction in the fees up front here so that we can change that before we send anything out to the businesses in an effort to help streamline or improve that process.
Okay,
I'm sorry, Sean, did you want to say something?
Yeah, that real quick. Does a license have to be a year long? Could we still license them to a 6 month at $500 or something, and then wait to see if there's any more shutdowns or anything else, or does it have to be a year long license?
No, there is no state license or anything that we have that's any shorter than 1 year.
Okay. Here's my question.
Unless somebody purchase it during the course of the licensing period and they buy a license that we end up prorating the fee for the period of time remaining in the license period.
But there'd have to be a change of ownership, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, if somebody comes in and buys a new license partway during the course of the year.
I see what you're saying.
Transfer, and somebody gets that license, then it's for what's ever remaining in the license period.
Okay, I understand.
Well, I'm in full support of reducing by 50% for the on-sale liquor licenses. I'm in full support of ensuring that those licenses are also paid, so that I understand, Bruce, from where you're coming, that it is a license that should be paid and used in the way it's intended. So that's what I would support if a motion were to be put forward.
Okay.
Just as
I'll
far
make
as
that
paying,
motion, 50% reduction.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Sean.
I said, I'll make the motion to Maggie's point that it's a 50% reduction and the license be paid in April.
Okay,
So
there's,
that's for, on sale?
On sale. Yes, on
Okay.
sale only.
I'll second.
okay, so the motion is that a 50% reduction on the liquor licenses on sale. Can be paid at the usual time. There's motion and support. Is there, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Maggie?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Bruce?
Aye.
And Jurek votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, I hope that'll help, Steve.
yeah, I totally agree. If a guy's got to borrow $1,500, that's nothing compared to what we've been through. So I can definitely see your point, paying it by February's, like we usually do. And plus insurance, it would best just let it run its cycle year to year. Insurance is always a sticker. So I do appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Just when the place opens up, support your local businesses.
That's right.
Thank you.
We wish
Thanks,
we
Dave.
Good luck.
Mayor,
Good luck.
could you summarize who the motion and the seconder were on that?
The motion was made by Sean and was seconded by Maggie.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm still learning. I'll catch it one of these days.
You're doing fine.
Okay. So with that, we Mike's up with the fee schedule. Yep.
Yeah, so I can give you an overview of the fee schedule here. We probably don't want to belabor it too much here, but in addition to the liquor fees that you just amended, which we'll add on to the official fee schedule here, we have all the departments annually review the fee schedule, and that is what is in front of you. So anything that's changed on the fee schedule is showing up highlighted in yellow. So I don't have to read through the whole thing, but those fees that are in yellow would have been changed. So I just highlighted a few general ones here, and all the department heads that had fee changes are on the call here tonight if you want to specifically question any fee change that's on here. But we do a lot of deferred assessment payoff fees. We weren't quite covering our staff time to do the paperwork on those, so an increase in that particular item. Road surface deposit fee, we did not have on our fee schedule previously. So adding that on, we were charging $250 and then increasing the amount. I have some minor zoning fee increases. Again, just I'm trying to cover my costs for staff time and publishing to do these reports. So minor subdivision fee, sign permit fee, and some site plan and fees and zoning verification letters, again, just to cover the time to do those. We don't make money on that. Another item related to planning and zoning for commercial erosion control escrow. We've been charging that. We just didn't have it on our fee schedule. And so I added that on as a light item. So it was a fee that's been in our code. We just didn't have it on the fee schedule.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry. What was it called?
The commercial erosion control escrow. It's a refundable item once a commercial business, like a Quick Trip, for example, gets their silt fence in place throughout the construction. And when they pull that and they're done, we make sure that they have, turf established and all the other landscaping done. So
Gotcha.
we refund it in the end. Getting into park fees, this one's specific to Memorial Park Baseball Stadium. Minor fee increase for a per day fee for tournaments specifically. Increasing rates for police officers, and this is something that we look at again annually. A new fee for pool. If a resident has a pool This is a fee to have a meter brought to that site and to fill the pool, rather than using a garden hose or whatever where it's running through their house meter. And that's something that we've had people request and actually do. So this puts that formally on the fee schedule. And then finally, various storm, electric, and water rate adjustments, which I think Bruce already went over with his budget at the end of 2020. But those are the changes in a nutshell. And if you have any questions about that, again, they're all highlighted on the attachments here. If you have questions about them specifically.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that?
Just a quick question on that pool thing again. Do you actually set up a meter for that pool?
I do. Yeah, we put a meter right on the fire hydrant then, and then they're able to fill their pool, and then we read it again and remove it. So
you have an actual person standing out there doing that and then watching it being filled?
no, we just place the meter and then they're responsible from that point on. Kind of like we do bulk water sales to different contractors. We'll put a meter out at a location or a construction site, and then they're responsible for it after that. So no, we don't stand there and monitor it.
The $450 per thousand, how does that relate to a normal customer water charge?
Just slightly higher. I think we're at $415 per thousand or $413 per thousand for standard water rates, and then so we're a little bit higher for bulk water. Just a little bit more for the separate billing and so that we need to do.
I'm okay with it. $75 seems kind of low for that, but I'm comfortable with it as long as we all feel that we're covering our increase in our salary and administration costs. I know that you mentioned yours, Ken, a lot of things you're dealing with, but I'm assuming the other departments are looking at it the same way, that we're trying to cover our increase in compensation and administrative. Anytime we touch something, it costs us.
Correct.
All right. If there's no other questions, I take a motion to approve the proposed, that would be the proposed 2021.
2021, correct.
Okay. Okay, one has a right to one, okay. The proposed 2021 official city fee schedule.
Mayor, this is Mike. Point of clarification is we will change based on your prior agenda action is that we'll reduce the $2,700 intoxicating on-sale liquor license from $2,700 down to $1,350 for this coming year.
Is that what everybody understands?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So with that, who wants to offer that motion?
So moved.
It's a resolution, but it's not numbered. That was Maggie.
Yes, it was. And so it's, we don't have a resolution number on it yet. So it's just the resolution adopting the 2021 fee schedule.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Take yes.
And was that Bruce?
Sean.
No, Sean.
Sean, I'm sorry. Second by Sean. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Motion carries. Oh, I'm so used to in person and they want a record. So Maggie,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Bruce,
You're gonna be saying all these names in your sleep tonight, I think. Aye.
and Julie votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, we're down to the consent agenda. So I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Now, are we, did we take and put the, we added the 10C to it?
Correct. That's the gambling permit, Rick. Yep.
Move to approve the consent agenda with the addition of 10C, the bingo license.
With the license.
I'll second.
Maggie second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. And Maggie
Aye.
and Rick,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
and Jurek, aye. Forgot who was next.
You're doing a fine job, Jarek. You're doing fine.
Okay, miscellaneous. How did you guys handle this? Did you take each person? Did you just wait for somebody to act? I don't know. The last board I was on, I just call on people, but
I'm fine if we just raise a hand if we have something.
okay. Does anybody have anything?
I have something. If possible, can we go back to saying the Pledge of Allegiance before our meetings? Even if we have just.
I'm good with it. Yep.
the flag.
Absolutely.
You bet. You bet.
All right.
You got a nice wall behind you, Maggie. There.
I've got the American flag on my shed. I can bring it in.
I think we can have Ken provide an item that we can put up for that.
Yeah, I kind of figured we can tap into some graphic.
Give me a thumbs up. He has her taken care of, so. Bruce.
Just to circle back, congratulations, Matt. Thanks for your 19 years of service to the city, and congrats on the promotion. I know you'll do well, and I appreciate your service to the city. I liked hearing about the training and the grooming and the education. I don't know if we have more of an education kind of program throughout the city, or if it's just kind of whenever a conference comes up, but I'm totally supportive of trying to get more employees to go to more formalized training or managerial leadership type of thing. So it's nice to hear that. Just to mention, Mike sent out the aquatic, and Maggie's well aware of it, but I noticed that in the commentary, they did mention that to expect that the losses will be greater than budget, which should be no surprise, but just so we keep an eye on that. Then Kurt mentioned that the $216,000 revenue above expenses, is that correct, that the golf course made $216,000?
No, that was not revenue over expenses. That was an acknowledgement that revenues were up about $100,000 through the first 11 months, and expenses were down $116,000 compared to November of a year ago. So combined with the revenues up and expenditures down, I believe that was Tom Mock in his summary said that combined that there was a difference compared to a year ago in November. That's the kind of turnaround that we've had in the golf course operations.
So what do we expect the year-end number to be about?
Well, as soon as Patty gets back from vacation and she puts together, we will provide that to the council. It won't be significantly different from a revenue and expense standpoint from what you were seeing for the end of November. But yeah, we've got staffing expenses in the maintenance department for the month, plus any of our other normal O&M costs to operating the facilities in that. But we've also got contributions that we make the second half transfer under the transfer to the golf course for the payment of principal and interest on the debt. You've got the $18,000 that you granted for the rental of those additional golf carts.
Okay, well, that's fine. Thanks for the clarification. He mentioned it. He said it in such a way that made it sound like there was financial statements in our packet, and I didn't see anything, so I didn't, thanks for the clarification.
No, I simply put that one page in that kind of summarized where the golf course operations were as of the end of November, because I didn't have December to provide to you with.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's all I got.
Okay, anybody else? Staff?
I just want to say, Mayor, I think for the first time you did a great job, so keep it up. I wouldn't be able to do it.
I'm gonna, before I forget, because, you know, when you have the party, when you retire and invite us, you know, but no, I'm just teasing. Glenn, I've known Glenn for a long time, and I remember when I started, when I was a little garbage collector in Prague, when we owned the garbage route, Glenn was a meter reader with the utilities. And him and Dennis Sawyer, actually, both. And they walked around reading their meters, and you know, we see where life is a person. A lot of hard work, and a lot of headaches too. And you can achieve if you put your mind to it, right?
Yep. Yep.
33 years? Is that what it is?
A little over 40 years.
40 years. Okay. I thought it was 43. So thank you. We have a month and 2 months left, but and good luck, Matt. To your
knowledge every day from them.
I do want to drive a snowplow though.
Anytime, let me know.
Keep it in mind, Matt. Keep it in mind.
Yep, if you ever need an extra driver,
I will call you at 2 in the morning on the next snowstorm.
Hey, better than that. So anyway, anything else before we adjourn?
I just want to pass on that we'll see what the governor has to say tomorrow regarding opening up some of the other businesses, but for city staff right now, we are looking at going back at on the police department. We're going to be finished with our 4 on 4 off schedule here on the 9th, and we'll transition back to our regular schedule on Sunday the 10th. I'm also anticipating looking at the 10th through the 11th through the 15th. We'll the city offices upstairs will also be transitioning back to their regular schedule coming in, and then we would be looking at opening City Hall to customers once again, probably the day after Dr. Martin Luther King Day. So we will put those plans in place and continue to move forward. I will hold off on allowing meetings or rental of our area yet, probably just to watch the numbers and see where things go. We'll determine that at a later date.
Has any of your guys gotten the vaccination yet, Jim?
We started vaccinating today. Belle Plaine was a distribution point for us. So there were 3 of us that got it today. 2 of them got it last week, just because Lesueur County had a couple extra doses that they were farming out. So 2 of them went down there. So yeah, we started that today. All of tier 1 A was started today, and that included EMS and then healthcare workers and long care residents at facilities also.
Is the fire department in there too somewhere?
Yeah, as part of EMS. Yep.
EMS.
Yep.
So I get mine on Friday. Were there any major complaints?
It's a huge needle.
Yeah, I grew out an extra arm.
I heard from the pharmacist in Wisconsin that it screws up your DNA.
Yeah, it makes you grow orange.
No, all right, enough.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Good night, everybody. Nice job,
Thank you.
Quinn.
Thank you. Good night.